IB Nation, welcome back to the Irish Breakdown Podcast. We're live here on a Monday, which would typically be a Monday mailbag, but fresh off the pot of gold on Sunday, which is a very busy and hectic day. Sean Davis joining me, of course, co-host of the Lucky Lefty Podcast, and recruiting analyst here at irishbreakdown.com. Sean, we went from early morning. People get early morning first. Deuce Knight gets everybody riled up on Sunday, right? Because pot of gold, right? He gets his grab.
The way he should, yeah.
Yes. Then Notre Dame gets the Notre Dame football account on Twitter gets everybody riled up. Then all the coaches get everybody riled up. And then at 9:00, there was a commitment in the 2025 class. Mr. Jerome Bettis Jr. out of Atlanta, Georgia, Woodward Academy, 2025 wide receiver. Obviously, his last name should be very familiar to folks out there. We're going to break that down. And then we're going to get into a deep conversation about the pot of gold, which saw over 100 players in the 2026 class get extended offers from the University of Notre Dame. Sean, we might even have a little bit of a visitor on the show today. Might have a special guest, not a commitment in the class for Notre Dame, but maybe an early 2026 player to know, and probably a player that some of y'all will have a little bit of understanding on who it is the minute that you see the last name. So we're going to get all that today, folks. Just a couple quick announcements on scheduling. Obviously, today was supposed to be the mailbag. Mailbag will be on Friday now. So we just had to flip the recruiting hour and the mailbag this week. We had to break down the pot of gold festivities from Sunday. If you guys have any questions today, we're not going to do a mailbag because trust me, we have a jam-packed show, probably 4 great segments for you all today. So if there's any questions, super chats are the way to get it on screen and get our initial impulse and our initial reaction and answer the question for you all. So super chats today. Also, Brian has been working on a film breakdown of the 9 FBS opponents that LSU faced last year for offensively from the Mike Denbrock perspective. So you get that stuff at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Make sure that you're signed up there as we get into the great conversation. People are already breaking rules. Sean, they're throwing mailbag questions in the chat. No mailbag today. Super chats. And we'll answer any question that you want to get into today. I am slightly under the weather for people that are asking in the chat. I lost my voice this weekend, but I am back. I'm ready to go. No one's going to stop me. No one is going to stop me today, Sean. Let's get in the first topic of today. Notre Dame at 9:00 Eastern time on Sunday, pot of gold day, received a commitment in the 2025 class from Atlanta, Georgia, Woodward Academy wide receiver, Jerome Bettis Jr. Sean, do you know his father? I think his father might have some relevance to the chat. I don't know. Might have some relevance, but let's talk about the commitments. Obviously, we're talking about a wide receiver that has the deep Notre Dame ties. Sean, your initial reaction before we go into the backstory on how this happened, connection to Notre Dame, obviously, get deeper into some of the offers, because although people want to just kind of cherry pick and throw shade at Jerome Bettis Jr., he did have offers from Texas A&M and Arkansas and Georgia Tech and Missouri. And he had some legitimate offers on the table, and he chose the Irish. Your initial thoughts on Jerome Bettis Jr. picking the Irish?
A long time coming. Yes. I think it's something we knew was in the chamber and would eventually be manifested. But you know what? I'm happy for the young man. I don't think, regardless of what you think about him, regardless of what you think about his film, the work academically and the work on the field that goes into even garnering the attention and offer. And look, I'm one of these people that I guess I'm in the gray area when it comes to nepotism. I don't like it when it goes against me, but I'm cool when it helps me. You know what I'm saying?
I get that. Yeah.
I had a lot of nepotism in my life. My dad was a very well-known person in the city of Chicago. And there were times he made some calls on my behalf. And so,
Sean, can I cut you off for a second? Because nepotism isn't created equal, right? Because I would argue Bryce Young in the 2024 class got his offer early because of who his dad was, not what he was putting on the film. But in the end of the day, that was a great early nepotism, because although he got his opportunities early on because of his last name, you know what Bryce Young did in the end, Sean, in the 2024 class? He earned it. He earned his offer he earned the ranking. So not all nepotism is created equal, to your point. It's not. Sorry to cut you off, by the way.
And no, some people could, some people could say they took a bet on the gene pool, right? To your point. They're not betting so much on the individual in the film. They're saying, yo, it's pretty good genes. So let's take a bet on this and see how it develops. And it worked in the case of Bryce Young. So
Yes,
look, this is a day to tip our caps to the young man.
yes.
On the work he's put in. Like, regardless, he put himself in position. Because I guarantee, I don't care who his dad is. If he wasn't to the level where the staff can say, okay, we can work with that, or we can develop that. There has to be something that they saw. And that goes to the hard work that he put in on and off the field. He still had to go to class and get the grades too. Let's not forget that.
Yep. Well, and Sean, I don't think Texas A&M offered him just because he was Jerome Bettis' son, right? That might be a Notre Dame side of things, right? To at least initial response to that conversation. But in the end, he accumulated a really nice offer list, right? A good offer list for where he plays football. He plays in a very good segment of Georgia football, a very good school in Woodward Academy, and he earned a lot of great offers. So in the end, some people might be against the commitment. Some people might have whatever they want to say about it. But regardless, Notre Dame likes Jerome Bettis Jr. They like him. They wanted him in the class, obviously, for a very long time. It did, and we'll get into this now, the backstory. This was only a matter of time. I mean, I remember when they offered him last pot of gold day, Sean. At the point then, you had heard, he was literally on this podcast. Jerome Bettis Jr. came on this podcast, and he said flat out, okay, that Notre Dame, Chad Bowden, and the rest of the staff had made it very clear to him, we are not offering you because of your last name. We are offering you because you're 6'2 plus, because you have strong hands, because you can help our football team at the end of the day. So he went through the process, and I give Jerome Bettis Jr. a whole lot of credit here, right? Would have been very easy early on to just be like, all right, cool, Notre Dame. I'm gonna take here. I know this place very familiar. He put out did you see the video he put out with his dad, several times in South Bend growing up and all that type of stuff, right? Like, it would have been the easy thing just at the point to just do it, right? But I give him a lot of credit because he went through the process, visited a lot of schools, camped a lot of places, did the 7-on-7 thing, and he earned a whole lot of offers, and he earned a lot of opportunities that he had to actually kind of work through and decide if Notre Dame was the best. Because there's always going to be naysayers, Sean. There's always going to be naysayers. Even if Jerome Bettis Jr. is a junior last year, had over 1,000 yards for Woodward Academy, okay, and is a more respected player from a recruiting ranking perspective, some people would still yell nepotism. They still would. They'd be like, oh, he wouldn't be the offer if his name was Jerome Brown, right? Like, look, RIP, by the way, Jerome Brown, great defensive tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles, but that's a conversation for another day. But regardless, he earned it. He is a player Notre Dame wants, Notre Dame likes, and it was only a matter of time. Sean, I guess, could he have gone to Texas A&M? I guess. But did anybody ever think for 1 second that he was going to end up with Notre Dame? I think everybody would be a liar that would say that.
Not if they're being honest with themselves.
Right.
No, if you're not, if you're being honest with yourself. And then you saw the connection and playing with Deuce Knight early this spring on the circuit. Like, you just knew. You knew the relationship with Deuce Knight, the conversation I had with Deuce Knight about his connection with him and Elijah Burris that was established. And that was even before Elijah Burris committed. It pretty much let me know. And for Deuce Knight to say, yo, I trust the evaluation of the coaches. Like, I'm not even worried. Like, yeah, I'm still talking to guys that are on the board, but the guys we have coming in that I feel like we're going to get, I trust that. So look, relax. Relax, Notre Dame fans, relax. It is Notre Dame sits at number 1, 17 commits. Am I correct?
18.
18. Yeah, 18 commits.
18. Yep.
Number 1 on multiple platforms.
Yep.
And I hear you. Well, we've been here before. You're right. But the program is at a different place, in my opinion. And I think the excitement from recruits around the nation is at a different place about the program than it was 2 years ago.
Yep. Well, and great segue, Sean, because you mentioned it. Number 18 commitment in the class for Notre Dame. We've been
Mhm.
talking about the number for a long time. Could get somewhere between 25 to 28, depending on what the format of the class is ultimately and how numbers kind of shake out. So we are much more than halfway there. I mean, we're talking about maybe 7 to 10 guys left in this class potentially. So we'll obviously talk about that moving forward. But he's also the third wide receiver in the class. You mentioned Elijah Burris. We'll mention Sean Terry, obviously the dynamic space player out of Ohio. He fits the need, Sean. We'll talk about the need in the class for a second because he is a player that brings a much different physical profile than the two wide receivers that you have in the class right now, right? Sean Terry is your gadget space slot type player that's going to catch the ball quick in the quick game, going to make guys miss, jet sweeps. Yeah, you're going to get the ball in his hand, manufacture touches. Then you have Elijah Burris, who's more of the Z in this offense, the outside receiver to the field. He's more route runner, smooth, in and out of breaks, create easy separation. He's more of that type of dude. Think like a Chris Olave that played at Ohio State, like play style perspective, right? And then you have Bettis that is more of the bigger body receiver. He is 6'3". He's 190 pounds. I spoke to his coach, one of his assistants at Woodward Academy, that talked on is like that kid has such a good frame that maybe he's an H-back eventually. Maybe he plays defense. Maybe he's a rover. Like he has some possibilities to him. So he brings the size and the physicality to the table, right? And I think that that's the first point we need to talk about is that he's the third receiver in the class, but he is the only wide receiver with size, really. Like Elijah Burris is 6 foot, 170 pounds, smaller guy. Sean Terry is 5'9, 5'10, 170 pounds, smaller slot type player. Jerome Bettis is the size to this to this profile, to this team in the 2025 recruiting class, and he obviously has incredibly strong hands, physicality. There's some questions about the caliber of athlete he is, but if nothing else, he brings a lot of size, physicality, and hand strength to the table. You're on mute, Sean. Sorry, I'll try to tell you.
When it comes to types, people don't understand when you're building a wide receiver room. They just want you to go get all the guys that are 6 feet, run a 4.3. And that's not how you build an offense. That's not how you build a wide receiver room, right? Because you get into redundancy. And that's something we saw Notre Dame struggle with because of injuries last year, that when they looked up, all they had was the same type of receivers. And they had no versatility, right? So now you're taking guys out of position. They're playing out of position, what impacts them. They're doing more, which leaves them vulnerable to injuries, because if they're used to running in the slot, now they're playing to the field, which is more area. You're asking them to do more things, run deeper routes. It's just, man, it's a domino effect. This is why you build a wide receiver room. And like you said, he gives them a big size receiver, which could be, look, we watched him and Deuce Knight be very successful with 50-50 balls in the red zone and 7-on-7. So just think about that. If he is that guy, or he can be that guy, he is beneficial. Mm-hmm. Regardless of what you think about his measurables or what he runs in the 40, if that is his skill set, and that skill set is something, look, red zone is important, man. You can go up and down the field. Red zone is important. And defensively and offensively, we've seen previous 2 years ago, the Notre Dame defense was a good defense, but they struggled in the red zone. They struggled in situational football. They took care of that last year, and all of a sudden, what? It's a top 3 defense. That's how marginal going from being a good defense to a top 3 defense is. Situations and being able to play well in those situations. So now Notre Dame can be even more efficient both ways. Because Notre Dame gets into the red zone, we're expecting Notre Dame to be able to pound it in. We got to be able to pound it in. Everything's on the offensive line. Well, Mike Denbrock's not trying to do it that way anymore. And if you can get a guy like Jerome Bettis to be valuable, along with the tight ends and other receiving options in the red zone, to be valuable pieces in the passing game, it bodes well for this offense to become efficient, especially against better defenses.
And I feel like you always need a glue guy, right? Like you always need a glue guy in a wide receiver room because Sean, like we fall in love with the guys that make crazy explosive plays and create big plays, and you need those guys, right? Don't get
Mm-hmm.
me wrong, you need those guys. But how about the guy that digs out a guy in the run game on a critical 3rd and 2, right? The guy that you can
Mm-hmm.
reduce down and be able to get into the blocking game. How about a guy that early on in his career is playing special teams on every coverage unit, kickoff coverage, punt coverage, and all those types of things? Those things go super unnoticed, right? But I think that is what Jerome Bettis could be potentially. Like, I'm not sold that he is big time starter Notre Dame, especially not early in his career. I'm just not sold on that being the fact. But if Jerome Bettis Jr. ends up in a 4 to 5 man wide receiver class, being the glue guy that stays for 4 years, represents your program, does all the little things from blocking to playing special teams to mix and matching different personnel looks, then that's where the value is, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we just can't look at this kid and say he's not a number one receiver. At least he's not a superstar on the next level, so he stinks, right? We had to have a nuanced conversation there. Not everybody is that, man. Not everyone is that.
I'll
I
go a step further with you, Double R.
Yeah.
We heard the same exact things by a certain wide receiver whose father might not have played in Notre Dame, but he was a Hall of Famer. And when he was being recruited by Notre Dame, everybody was like, he looks slow. Why are they getting him? Da da da. And you talk to any and every player that was around the program at that point in time, they'll tell you Corey Robinson was one of the best playmakers at that position.
It's an interesting comp too, because Corey was obviously a little bit taller coming out of Texas. He was like a legit
Absolutely.
6'4", but
Absolutely.
he was that glue guy though. And he
Mm-hmm.
was, and before he started having,
The
the
injury
durability stuff,
problem. Yeah.
obviously, yeah. I mean, he was a valuable member of Notre Dame. He really was because he would
Absolutely.
block, he would catch. He was also a great kid and student off the field, so like you never had to
Mm-hmm.
worry about him. Yeah, I mean, if he's a Corey Robinson, man, then something wrong with
What's
that.
the
I mean,
complaint?
right?
What's the complaint? It is literally the similar situation. No one was super excited about Corey Robinson coming into that class. But from the moment he stepped on the field, don't believe us, don't believe media. Players that played will tell you, yo, he would just make plays and it would be effortless. Like it's almost like he really, and I think the way he chose, I think his true passion is what he's doing.
Yes.
I don't think he
Yes.
really had a true passion for football. I think he just played it and had abilities and could be good at it.
Because he was 6'4" with great hands, right? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
you know, it bears watching, man. It bears watching. I tell people all the time, man, don't get so invested in people and stars because our opinions don't decide whether or not they're going to be successful. Jerome
Yeah.
Bettis Jr. decides that. So
Exactly.
and as a fan, if he's successful, guess what we're going to do? All of a sudden, we're going to be like,
Exactly. And Sean, I would say this too is that the nuance of the conversation is also this: we have to be willing to admit we're wrong if we're wrong, right?
mm-hmm,
And I am a victim of this because I think people that know me on the channel and know me just in real life and on Twitter or wherever you know me, I'm a very confident person, right? In my evaluations, I'm very confident in what I see ultimately. But if Jerome Bettis Jr. still has another season of high school football, we're only talking about a junior in high school right now. Who's to say he doesn't take a massive step as a senior? Who's to say? I mean, again, last year around this time, we were questioning why is Bryce Young a take for Notre Dame?
mm-hmm,
Right? We were questioning that. Now, I'm not as confident that Jerome Bettis Jr. will take a big jump like Bryce because Bryce always had athleticism, right? And the long frame. So he's a little bit of a different situation. But my point is that the final story of the high school versions of these recruits has not been written yet. We have to understand that. Like right now, I have my questions about Elijah Burris. I have my questions about Jerome Bettis Jr. I have my questions about Joseph Reif. Those are 3 guys that I'm like, I'm not sure, man. Not sure
mm-hmm.
about that one. But you know what they have? They have time to prove me wrong, brother. They have time to
Absolutely.
prove me wrong. And I will be willing, if they do, to sit there and say, you know what? Wasn't right about that one. I was a
Yeah,
big fan of Ben Minnick when he was
yeah.
a senior. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, he was a big fan. Changed my mind, right? Guys change your mind all the time. You have to be willing to change your mind at the end of the day. And if he does, he does. And it will be. Here's the big thing, Sean. Can we talk about this? Jerome Bettis Jr. becoming a good player at Notre Dame would be massive for the University of Notre Dame. Can we
Absolutely.
talk about that? Like
Yeah.
the implications of him becoming a dude at Notre Dame, or at least a good player at Notre Dame, that would be great for the brand of Notre Dame football and the future of Notre Dame football, because that last name, whether we want to admit to it or not, is a very attractive thing for a lot of people. Let's be honest with ourselves.
Yeah. You have to agree that once again, Notre Dame, look, there are a lot of smart people in that room. And I think the massive success, with the commitment yesterday, with Deuce Knight, the commitment, and then what ensued with the pot of gold, it was just a massive successful day for Notre Dame. So you tip your cap to Marcus Freeman, the entire coaching staff, Chad Bowden, Dre Brown, their support staff, everybody connected to the program. Instead of sitting up here, like, understand that yesterday was a win-win. Jerome Bettis Jr. is a win-win for Notre Dame. He is. First of all, the connection to his dad, the continuance of that legacy at Notre Dame, and whatever he gives to the program as a football player is a win-win. It is. And we sit up here and we can complain and whine and this, that, another. I want this, I want that. Somebody in the chat say, I want a 5-star, with size. His name is Derek Meadows, ladies and gentlemen. They have him. They're going after him. They have him. So once again, you get.
Well, they don't have him yet, Sean. They're gonna have to fight for that one. But yeah, I got you.
I'm not saying have him in commitment, but I'm saying they have him as far as in their sights. So look, we can go to. I'm sure Alabama has 3 stars that they get every year.
Oh yeah.
Guys that weren't highly thought of. I just don't see the loss of the commitment of Jerome Bettis Jr. Are we as excited about his commitment as some others possibly? Hey, okay, that's up to each and everyone's opinion, which everyone is entitled to. But at the end of the day, let's not act like this is a great situation for Notre Dame, period. It's a great situation for Notre Dame because at the end of the day, last I checked, regardless of nepotism, something has to be earned.
Yep.
Something has to be earned. I don't think he's on the offer list if he has a 2.2 GPA. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, you have to be like a top 5 kid for Notre Dame to make an exception, from a admission standpoint. And this is not that type of kid. He's an elite person, elite student. And if you don't believe he's an elite athlete, doesn't matter. He still determines his value to the program. And that's something we just have to wait and see.
Yep. Yeah, so I mean, I think that Jerome Bettis Jr. brings a lot of value to the Notre Dame program. Whether he becomes a star wide receiver or not, I think that the value in him as a person, as a student, and as a potential glue guy for Notre Dame, at worst, is going to present value to Notre Dame. Now, Sean, you mentioned something which I think is a great ending to this conversation, okay? Notre Dame, though, now, 3 wide receivers in the class, Elijah Burris, Sean Terry, Jerome Bettis Jr., you have to get a dude with potentially the last spot. There's a possibility that Notre Dame could go to 5 if the right situation happens. Okay. There's a possibility out there, but whoever this 4th wide receiver is that you bring in, it's got to be a dude, man. Has to be, because let's be honest with ourselves. Elijah Burris is hopefully a developmental dude that becomes a guy, right? Sean Terry is a niche player that is a very valuable niche. And I think he's going to be a really instrumental player for Notre Dame, especially in the RPO game. But he's not a high volume kid, more than likely on the next level. And then we talked about what Jerome Bettis Jr. potentially brings to the table. You need now to find that last spot potentially with a dude. And you mentioned it. You mentioned him. There's one guy that, Sean, literally a couple hours after Jerome Bettis Jr. makes his commitment, you know who he's tweeting at already, Sean? You know who he's tweeting at? Bishop Gorman, wide receiver, Las Vegas, Nevada, Derek Meadows. 6'5", 200 pounds, athletic, physically imposing wide receiver that is right near the top of Notre Dame's board. Now, he's not the only player at the top of the board, though. I would say that Notre Dame is still recruiting heavily Taylor Taylor, who's going to be back on campus. They're still recruiting Raiden Vines Bright out of IMG Academy, formerly out of the state of Arizona, that is going to be taking 2 visits to Notre Dame this offseason. So it's not just Derek Meadows in this conversation. Not just Derek Meadows, but Notre Dame does need to, if it stays at 4, get a dude at 4. If it goes to 5, I would argue that you should get 2 dudes out of the last 2. Like, if you can push it to 5, potentially getting Derek Meadows and Raiden Vine Bright, or Derek Meadows and Taylor Taylor, or Taylor Taylor and Raiden Vines Bright, whatever the combination is, that would make you feel a whole lot better about wide receiver recruiting, right? Because right now you have your depth, you have 3-man class that can work, but ultimately you need to find a dude or 2 to finish out this class. You need to be able to close on a couple of those elite dudes at the top of the board.
I want them to stretch it to 5 RR.
I would hope so too.
I think they have room to add an extra wide receiver. You know, that depends on how they look at things and how it shapes up in the 26 class and what they think about the wide receivers in the 26 class, which I'm sure we're going to get to. But Taylor Meadows would be a dream. Are you, man? If you get Taylor Meadows, I don't think, I'll be honest, if they end up with Taylor Meadows in the class, I don't think anybody would even care about the rest of the class. I just don't. I really don't. And I think that effect happens a lot of times in recruiting RR because we become fascinated with either film or star ratings, right? And star rankings. I don't think getting Cam Williams early had such an impact on the way people thought about wide receiver recruiting. So this is the thing. Look at this. So let's inverse this, right? Let's say, hypothetically, Notre Dame's first wide receiver commit was Derek Meadows. It totally changes the way everyone sees the rest of the class.
Absolutely.
Totally changes it. Cam Williams commits early. Nobody was super intensive about Logan Sadate and the other receivers that came. They didn't do that to them.
Yeah, and Logan Saldate was only a 3-star when he committed to Notre Dame. Now, he became a 4-star by a couple of different platforms. But to your point, Sean, like, nobody was like, why are you taking this 3-star in the chat, right?
You know why? Because we had a guy.
Right.
We already had a guy in the class. And see, that's the problem now with the 25 class and why these kids are being scrutinized by a lot of fans, because they don't have that protection in their mind of having that guy in the class. If you had a guy that signed early, then fans all of a sudden, they're more willing to say, okay, who is this kid? Okay, he must be good. They must see something in him. But because that big receiver hasn't committed early like Cam Williams did, man, you know, you see the inverse of it. And you see the impact of the responses to the commitments from a Sean Terry, from an Elijah Burris, from a Jerome Bettis Jr. So that just shows you perspective and how things can change when things, based upon the way things happen. You know, this year just seems to be the inverse of the way last year's wide receiver recruiting went. And if they end up with the top guys at the end, what does it matter? I know I went to the first practice and I was like, oh, okay, this cat Michael Gilbert is okay. All right. I know Cam Williams is, the expectation is he's going to be the dude, but this other guy, he's pretty good, man. Too.
It's pretty good. Yep. And Logan Saldate's not even going to get there until the summer, right? So,
right.
Yeah. But regardless, because I think we need to have like a nuanced conversation a little bit more, because I see in the chat where we're just talking about, you know, stargazers and, you know, haven't won a championship in 35 years. Sean, there were some really good recruiting classes under Brian Kelly, wasn't there? And did they win a national championship because of that? Or I don't know, man. Just there's a lot of nuance to the conversation. I will be full transparent. I have my questions about wide receiver recruiting in 2025. Okay, but my questions will get answered a whole lot more if you finish out the class the way you should finish out the class. Then it becomes a little bit of a different conversation, right? Mm-hmm. I'm always much more a I'm always much more, and I agree. Some stars matter to some degree. I agree with that in the chat, but I also care more about offer lists than I do about stars ultimately. Because Sean, do you remember when I just had a little bit of an intel piece on Dalen Penson, who's the defensive back in 2025 coming to campus this
Yeah,
offseason?
yeah.
You remember when he was offered, Sean, and people were like, "Who the heck is this kid? He's got no stars, right? Like no stars." Well, now he's ranked the number 100 player in the country. He's a consensus 4-star player and a top 200 player by everyone. These rankings change so frequently and so quickly, and it's so subjective. I prefer offer lists. Okay, talk to me about an offer list. Sean Terry's the 3-star, right? Go look at his offer list and give me a stupid 3-star. Stop, man. There were so many great schools that were coming after Sean Terry. Javion Campbell, that's visiting this summer. I would take that kid yesterday, right? Yesterday. He's a 3-star, though. Well, I don't care. I don't care if he's a 3-star. You know why? Because his offer list is expanding quickly. Ohio State just offered. I think Michigan may have, or they're going to very quickly here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. And we'll see. We'll see as we move forward. But again, the star rankings, they matter in the sense of like it's a subjective way that it matters, right? If I look at the class and I say, personally, I watch the film, I watch these players, and I'm like, dude, they didn't get enough high caliber talent, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
subjectively to myself, that matters. But I'm not going to look at just a blank 247 ranking. All due respect, 247, not throwing shade on them specifically, but just a random recruiting platform. And I just look at the rankings, I look at the stars, and I don't do any research myself. I don't look at any offer lists. I don't do any background research. I don't watch the film. I don't do any of it. And I just take that for gospel. Well, that's flawed, right? That's just taking someone's word for it that you have no idea how much they know. What, yeah, right? Like it's just, there's
Right.
nuance to this conversation. There's
Why
nuance.
why do NFL teams employ scouts to go to small schools and non-power five schools on Saturdays and weekends for practices? If it was all about 5 stars and 4 stars, then just go to Ohio State games, Michigan games, Notre Dame games. Don't go scout the non-power five schools that lead to players making it to the Hall of Fame. Don't do that. Don't go to the Gremlins. You know how many HBCU guys from back in the day are in the Hall of Fame because the scout went outside of the norm to go find a great player? But no, don't do that. No need to actually think outside the box and actually watch film and actually embrace coaching. No need to do that. No need to do that. You talked about it. Brian Kelly, problem wasn't talent. It was coaching and development. Huge problem, coaching and development. Huge problem defensively. When you had big time players, but you had a coach that was just a bumbling fool and didn't know how to implement great players like a Jalen Smith into his defense. He had defensive backs making checks. Who does that? Cornerbacks being able to make checks. Who does that? Man, look, playing about Clemson didn't have a top 5. When they won their first championship, that didn't come from a top 5 recruiting class. It didn't. They eventually got there with the Trevor Lawrence championship. When Deshaun Watson won, that wasn't based upon, that wasn't built on top 5 recruiting classes. That was based on coaching, culture, and development, and having a big time quarterback. That's what it was based on. Right. Offensive line was super mid. Super mid. But they held up against Alabama, didn't they?
They did.
Okay,
they did.
then.
Yeah. Well, you're not wrong.
So Notre Dame is doing the same thing, in my opinion.
Yep.
Everybody that wanted Marcus Freeman just to come in and just start offering 5 stars based upon what? Do you understand what the narrative in the recruiting circles was about Notre Dame? There was some work to be done.
And also, Sean, I mean, Notre Dame included in this, but in a lot of colleges, they have recruiting departments now that watch film. They have scouting departments now. They have a general manager role. What's the point of having all that if you're just going to look at a recruiting ranking from 247 or On3 or anybody else? That's not your evaluation. It's not your evaluation at all. So I will, again, there are players that I have questions upon, but I'm willing to have my mind changed first and foremost. And then overly though, and I express this, right, is that I love having a conversation about this stuff. I truly do. And if someone has, like, let's say, look, let's use Joseph Reif as an example, right, Sean? There's a wide range of varying opinions on what Joseph Reif is as a player. Some people really like him. Some people aren't. Some people aren't super high on him, and some people lie in between. Let's talk about why, right, Sean? Like, let's talk about why. And I don't want any of this conversation about why to be about his star rating. I don't care about that. On film, I have some concerns. Someone that doesn't have concerns, talk to me about why you don't have concerns. How does he fit? What's he going to be on the next level? Like, there's a nuance to this conversation about star rankings that I get lost in. But regardless, folks, that is Jerome Bettis Jr. And I know our conversation went way off the rails there, but I want to move on here in a second because we have a special guest that is going to be joining the show here in a second. Before I get there, though, and a little bit of an intro, please, before we move on to the next section of the podcast, hit that like button for us. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, notification bell if you're listening to us on YouTube. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribed, and then also 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. Boards.irishbreakdown.com. We'll have a lot of team and recruiting intel moving forward for the rest of the season. First place to find it is boards.irishbreakdown.com. We'll get into an interview here next with a recent offer for the University of Notre Dame in the 2026 class on the Irish Breakdown podcast. All right, folks, I am excited about this one, okay? Super excited. So, for people that lived under a rock, and I know you've been listening on this show for probably a while now, if you guys have been on here, but Notre Dame just had their massive pot of gold offer event that was started about 3 years ago and has continued to expand each and every year to be absolutely a special event. We had over 100 players offered in the 2026 class by the University of Notre Dame, and we thought it'd be a great opportunity to potentially bring on a young man that you're going to know his last name very quickly, but I promise you, don't hyper focus on the last name. Go watch what he does on the football and on the lacrosse field because we have one of the best dual sport athletes in the 2026 class. That is Mr. Dylan Faison joining the show today. Dylan, how's everything going, man? Appreciate you hopping on.
Thank you. It's going great. How are you guys?
Oh man, we're getting heated talking recruiting here today, man, but it's going to be fun times and we're excited to have you on. First and foremost, for people that aren't familiar with Dylan yet, he is out of Boca Raton, Florida, St. Andrews School. He is not only a new offer by the Notre Dame in the 2026 class as a wide receiver, he's also, according to some platforms, the #1 lacrosse player in the 2026 class. So we have a legit two-sport athlete here, Sean. A lot more athletic than I ever was, that's for sure. Dylan, wanted to start you out, man, because we really appreciate the time. Talk to me about this offer that you just received for the University of Notre Dame, man. I know obviously people are going to know your brother, because they're going to know your family pretty well, but how special of a moment was that for you as only a sophomore to be able to be offered by some place like the University of Notre Dame?
I mean, it means a lot to me and the family. It definitely means a lot to me because he's putting trust in my abilities for what I can do for the program in later years to come. But it's definitely a lot for me because it's been my #1 for years now to come. Before Jordan committed, before anybody in my family wanted our family members to go to Notre Dame, it's been my #1 spot. So once getting that offer, let a lot of the stress come off my back and let me just play now.
So Dylan, when did you officially? Because for people that don't know, you guys find out about this offer being extended beforehand, right? So it's not just like Sunday morning you woke up with the text message, right? So
Yep.
talk to me about just kind of when you first heard you had gotten offered, who offered you, and just kind of how hard I guess maybe it was keeping it under wraps leading up to the Pot of Gold day.
Yeah, so I've been talking with Coach Brown for about 2 to 3 weeks now. We've been going back and forth. They let me know about the Pot of Gold day, not letting me know that I got an official offer yet, but kind of insinuating that it could come on that 17th. And so just trying to build a relationship with Coach Brown. But initially, when Pot of Gold day did hit, Coach Bowden texted me, the recruiter, and he was like, hop on a call at 12:45 with Coach Brown. So hopped on that call at 12:45, and Coach Brown had let me know that I had got the offer, and I was ecstatic. And then I talked to Coach Denbrock for a little bit. And then after that was Coach Freeman, and he let me know that, I'm one of their good recruit for them, and that I mean a lot for their program, and that it would be good to get me up there in a couple weeks. And then I ended up ending it with Coach Bowden, and he let me know that the same thing. So it was a good experience for me too. My first offer is Notre Dame. Can't complain.
Dylan, it's a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for joining us today. And the irony is, I'm actually at 3 o'clock today going to watch my godson play lacrosse up here in Chicago, Kenwood against Oak Forest. And watching him, it's opened my eyes to the game. Of course, the dual success that your brother's having at the University of Notre Dame, playing both sports. What is it? Because, when I watch the game from my virgin eyes, I guess, just starting to watch the game consistently, I see soccer sometimes, I see hockey sometimes, I see some elements of football with the physicality. What is it, do you think, about lacrosse that allows the easy transition specifically to the wide receiver position for you and your brother, and possibly other players down the line that could play both sports at Notre Dame?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is like when you're a receiver and you're going against maybe less competition. You're not worried about the press, but once you get to the more higher levels, the press is going to be a thing to throw you off your game, especially for faster athletes. So when you're playing lacrosse, you have a defender, someone in your chest consistently. So it kind of makes you move your body to certain areas that you can't get touched from, and that helps from with the press. And then as you continue and you dodge through multiple people, you have to avoid those people. So after the catch, it's much easier if you're playing a sport like lacrosse, because I'm having to avoid kids. I don't want to get hit with the stick. I don't want to get hit to the ground. I have to figure out an area where I can shoot with my hands free. So, I don't like being touched by defense, or and the same thing of football, being hit by a defender. So it helps you avoid that and make you more special after the play. Because once the ball in your hands, you gotta do something with it.
Dylan, which love came first, man? Was it football or was it lacrosse early on for you?
It was definitely football. Football
Nice.
was something that me and my brother both grew up playing first. After maybe 2 years after football, we got introduced to lacrosse by a very close friend, Mark Bettis. He let us know about the sport, and we fell in love with it ever since. And it's kind of been correlating to each other ever since that day that lacrosse was involved with my life. So it's helped a lot with both ways.
Did you get a chance to talk to Jordan after you were officially offered? What was kind of his feedback for you?
I mean, yeah, the minute I got that offer, I called him immediately. I mean, that's my brother. We have a bond that no one else has. It's that brother bond. It's more than your parents' bond. It's more than your best friend. He's someone that I truly die for, and that he's someone I trust. And when I called him with that information about getting that offer, he let me know, like, look, I know that you'll have a lot of pressure being pushed towards Notre Dame, and
Sure.
if it's not something that you would want to do, then you don't got to do it. But I let him know, like, that it's something I'm definitely looking forward to do, and he took a lot of pressure off my back, and that's what he usually does. So he's a great help to me, especially. So
It's interesting because your brother said, he talked to you about being pushed to Notre Dame. In your opinion, from your side of the recruitment, is it being pushed or is it more of a draw to Notre Dame because of how things have changed around the narrative with Marcus Freeman on the
yeah,
recruiting trail?
at first, it feels like, because me personally, I love Notre Dame before he even had a thought about going there. It's been my number one since I was young. So when he kind of committed there, from people, not like from the coaches or anything being pushed, but from people on the outside, they're always talking and they're telling me where I should go, and it's kind of like they're pushing, and then I had to have a sit down moment with myself and be like, is this what I want? Is this what I truly want? And going to a couple games here and there, looking at the fan base, getting the actual feeling and realization that these people are here to support you, it woke me up like, it's where you want to be. There's nowhere else that has the fan base, the energy, the coaches care. I mean, he's telling me all these things about in school. Like, Notre Dame truly is a school that's going to set you up for life after sports, and that's my main thing. Is that when sports end, which it all does come to an end, how will I continue to bring money to my family, and how will I continue to help everyone around me? And Notre Dame is a spot that can push me to do that. So
Dylan, what was it like? Because I'm curious, because Jordan obviously was in a very different situation for you. Obviously, he had to do the preferred walk-on thing early on from the football team, obviously a scholarship athlete from the lacrosse side, but he had to prove his worth very early on, right? To show that he was that guy. And then by midseason, it was like, dude's just too good to leave off the field, right? Like, we got to get him on the field. You, as a person now that has a scholarship from the University of Notre Dame as only a sophomore. So we got a lot of time here, obviously, until 2026, right? But
Yeah.
ultimately, seeing Jordan as your older brother go in, maybe a little bit of that underdog feel, but then be able to take advantage of every opportunity. What was that like? Just kind of see your brother just flourish so early on for Notre Dame.
You know, I knew it. Like I didn't have a doubt in my mind that he wasn't gonna be a successful player. You know, I've seen the kid work. I've been working with him. Like it's my brother. I know everything that he does, everything that he puts into it. And when he's an underdog, he'll work his way up in any sport, in the classroom, anything. If you look at him lower than what he is, which in some cases that people look at it like that, like on the inside lacrosse rankings, he was ranked 34, and he felt that was disrespectful. So he decided to work hard, and that was the same thing when he comes to Notre Dame. He goes in, he's a walk on, and he said, "Let's work." Like I want to get myself to a spot, and no one else can push me more than myself. So he took that chance, and he said, "Once I got the opportunity, I'm going," and he went. So I'm proud of that kid.
Well, Dylan, I'm curious about your own game because I watched your football highlight before I watched your lacrosse highlights because I knew obviously Notre Dame was very interested in you in the football side of things, and you averaged like I think almost 30 yards a catch as a sophomore. Like it was some wild number, and you were obviously a big time player for your high school this past year. Can you talk to me, outside of the lacrosse thing for a second? Your development as a football player as a sophomore, really being able to become that big time guy, big time, big play dude for your high school and to be able to see your game now evolve to that next level.
It definitely was a different level that St. Andrews has brought to my game with the coaching staff, because my freshman year I had broke a collarbone the second game of my season, and the eighth grade year I didn't get a lot of chance to play at the other schools that I was attending. So when I got that opportunity to be coached as a receiver, it definitely helped my game a lot, because it was my first time even playing the position. I was a running back before, defensive back, and youth. So it's my first time playing it. And once I realized that it was something that I wanted to do at the next level, I kind of said, here it's like a time to buckle down. I got to learn the position. It's not just something you can go out and do. DBs have techniques that stop you from getting your hands free and catching that ball. So definitely was a big learning moment for me, and humbling too, because I would go out and go work out with some of the top DBs, and they would throw me to the ground, and I'm not knowing what to do. But after a couple months, I've learned certain things, and I feel as I'm ready. So.
Sean, I was super jealous. I was texting Dylan this morning when I was trying to get him on, and he told me he has spring break for 2 weeks. Sean, when did these kids start getting 2 weeks spring breaks, man? Two weeks.
Hey, for us, it used to be cleanup week, right? It wasn't even called spring break. It was called cleanup week. So.
Oh yeah. Man. Well, Dylan, talk to us just kind of every day right now. I mean, obviously you got a little break from school, but I know lacrosse season. Last time I checked in with you, you said you guys were 10-1 and off to a good start. So just how's lacrosse season and how's the off season treating you so far?
Lacrosse it's a bond. It's going great. It's a crazy bond with my teammates and the coaching staff. As if you don't know, our team is 3-time state champions right now, and they've three-peated. So this year we're looking for the fourth, and it's just something that you'd want to be like. You'd go there and you just say like, I want to bring my kids there one day. Like I go to that school and I get there. I know I got to work. Someone's coming from my spot the next day. So yeah. It definitely helps. The team's doing great right now. We just obviously coming off of one loss, but we just came back from Orlando last weekend and played a very tough Lake Mary team that is 35-0 from their third season, and they had three-peated, so we didn't get a chance to play them, but we had beat them and killed their streak, which is a very good thing for us because they were also ranked two spots ahead of us in the top Florida ranking. So it was definitely a moment for us to, like we're here type moment, and we played a very good Lake Highland Prep team the day after. So
to dig into that challenge facing you guys right now, what does that feel like? Because most people from the outside in would think that's tremendous pressure, like trying to extend that streak 4 in a row. But it seems like you guys have a mindset that's more about embracing the challenge rather than catching the pressure. that everybody seems to think might be on you guys?
Yeah, it's definitely there's definitely pressure. It's there. Everybody feels pressure, but the difference between our team is that we always try to apply the pressure to the other team. So in the beginning of a game, we have this thing that we do every game, and we get to the middle of the line, and we just get loud, and we let them know that we're here. Like, this isn't, you're not going to walk onto our field, anything. We don't let you feel comfortable at all. If it's a away game for you, the comfortability that you have at your house is not going to be the same thing when you step foot on this field, and that truly does make teams play worse when they're at our home. Because look, me and my brother played against St. Andrews for 2 years. I played 8th grade and 9th grade year against them. And I know what it feels like to be the person looking outside in, and now I have to look from the inside out. But from the outside, it's definitely like these kids you don't like them. They're loud, they're obnoxious. You think their heads are full of themselves. But once you get to them, you understand the methods that they're doing and the critiques that Coach Sheeman wants us to do. And it's all smart. I think it's all mind tactics that end up throwing everybody off.
So how are you? You got visits coming up, getting up to Notre Dame. What's the rest of the spring and summer like after school is done? Are you going? Because there's a huge lacrosse circuit for the summer as well, traveling teams, and then you have camps and things of that nature. Are you going to be doing both football and lacrosse this summer?
Most likely, honestly, no. I'm gonna try to keep the same summers that I've been doing since I was 12, 13. I live in New York for the summer, so it's a grind. But I know that I have a good trainer there that works me out in the summer. He's great, like probably one of the best I'll ever have. So that feeling of going up there and working is gonna outdo anything. So I'm trying to get as college ready as I can be. So
yeah,
I have to ask him, Double R. I have to.
Go for it. Yep.
Your top 3 food spots in New York. I have to get into this. Well, your top 3 food spots, or just say foods to eat in New York. Are you getting a dog on the corner, or you getting a nice little?
You got to go to the pizza. You got to get the bagels.
Nice
in New York. Yeah,
you're gonna go with pizza number one. I mean,
okay.
can't go wrong with pizza. They got good spaghetti. I mean, all the Italian foods there are different. They're different.
True,
they got good spaghetti, but one of the most slept on foods I think there is their Chinese food. Their Chinese food is very good because I'm in an area that's Bayside, so it's like right off that like Queens area, and they have this Chinese spot, and it's literally called Chinese food. That's the name of the restaurant. But let me tell you, when I ate at that spot, it opened my eyes. My eyes lit up. I was just happy. Went home, went there for the whole week. Just continue going back and forth, but definitely pizza holding the number one.
Solid.
Yeah. Well, Sean, I knew pizza was going to be number one because I'm actually Dylan. We haven't talked about this, but I'm actually down in New Jersey, so like I'm a shouting distance away from New York, right? So, pizza. Got the thin crust pizza up there, of course, right? And then you got to get the bagels. I don't know what it is, Sean. I think it's the water up there in New York. I don't know what it is, but these bagels, man,
you always
something
tell
different, bro. Something different. Absolutely,
the bagels
something different.
Are good, yeah.
And see, the Chinese food, I will say this: I have family in New York. They go to the Chinese spot for their wings, which is crazy to me. They love the chicken.
Well,
they love the wings at the Chinese spots in New York.
Funny enough, my wife is actually Korean, so we just had Korean barbecue, and these Korean fried wings, dude, are like bonkers. Like you would not even believe it. Not even believe it.
Well, all right, so off the bone.
Yes, super tender, no doubt about it. Dylan, last question, right? And it's a little bit of a two-parter, so I want to end it here. I probably should have asked this in the beginning. I think I actually sent you this question to get you ready for it. But number one, is it safe to say, and this is a very stupid question probably, but is it safe to say that you are going to try to play lacrosse and football on the next level? And then the second part to that question is, how reassuring is it for you? Because we've seen people do this before, but obviously having a brother that is literally flourishing doing this, how, I guess, influential or how comforting is it to know that it is something that you would be able to accomplish?
Definitely the goal for college and for all 4 years of college is to play football and lacrosse. And I think that me personally, I want to follow the exact blueprint that my brother had with the whole situation, because football and lacrosse, whether it's you can get hurt in one season, you know, that's life. You can get hurt doing anything, you know. But
Yep.
when you bring up in a level of lacrosse, there's some things that you can get in lacrosse that you can't get in football, and there's something that you can get in football that you can't get in lacrosse. And
Sure.
for you to flourish and be different from everybody else at one, I feel as like you have to do the other one. What makes Jordan different from a lot of the other football players is that he has another sport that he can kind of look back to, and the skills that he does he can do in the sport, and it makes it his body more used and adjusted to certain things. And I
Yep.
feel as if you do lacrosse in college, you're going to flourish at football, and if you do football, you're going to flourish at lacrosse. So they suit each other perfectly.
Love it. Again, joined by 2026 St. Andrews school wide receiver Dylan Faison, of course, the younger brother of Jordan Faison, star wide receiver for Notre Dame, star lacrosse player for the University of Notre Dame as well. Dylan, we really appreciate you taking some time, man. We will definitely have to get you back on. This is a fantastic interview. Congratulations on the offer, and thank you so much for joining the show today, man. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you, guys.
Sean, that's a sophomore in high school. What are we doing here, man? How do they keep getting more impressive? I just don't understand. I just can't fathom this, man.
Tip of the cap to the parents around the world doing their jobs, man.
Seriously, bro.
Doing their jobs. I say this all the time, and you've worked with kids before as a teacher. I've mentored a lot of kids with what I do. Look, kids come into this world as blessings, and the people around them screw them up. That's the way I see it. Whether it's people, circumstances, situations, environments, you know, they're really good landscapes when they come into this world. And when you see young men like him and his brother, it really is a direct reflection of the people they've been around and their parents. It really is. It really is.
Yep. Parents, support system. Sounds like he's obviously been very well developed by his high school as well. Coaches involved there on the football side of things, on the lacrosse side of things. So, yes, thank you so much for Dylan Faison for joining us today. 2026 wide receiver that was just recently offered by Notre Dame during the Pot of Gold. I hope you all enjoyed that so much. Dylan, let me actually make sure I have this right real quick, Sean, because I should have asked him to do this because obviously he knows his handles a lot more, but you can follow him on X or on Twitter. I still going to call it Twitter at Dylan_Faison7. At Dylan_Faison7. That's all lower cases as well. So make sure you go give him a follow, Notre Dame fans, in case he does end up with the Fighting Irish long term. So make sure. And yeah, if you haven't seen his film, by the way, very impressive player.
Yeah.
Very impressive player. Sean, literally dynamite. I mean, like his football film was super impressive, right? Like I was very surprised because at first I'm like, that's kind of, you know, we'll see about that one, right? We'll see. But I watched it. I'm like, yep, he's a guy.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. And then Sean, then I got to start watching his lacrosse highlights, and he's scoring between 4 and 7 goals every single game. And I'm like, brother, this is because he's only a sophomore in high school. He's only a sophomore.
Let me tell you something, Double R. It is amazing to me, and that's why I asked him the question about the transition, because we're seeing more and more, even in, you know, because Chicago is just really opening its doors to lacrosse in the inner city. There are some suburban programs that play, but in the inner city, we're starting to see public schools teams sprout up. And I think it's a great advantage. And I think it's actually going to add to the talent on the football field and make the football talent a little bit better at certain positions. And we'll get into this, how regional in offers where we see position by position and offensive defense side of the ball, certain regions you go to for certain positions, and then other regions might be a little more wide open. And I think Chicago has been really about offensive line play, defensive line play. You know, every now and then you'll get a quarterback from the state, but, you know, wide receiver and defensive backs really wasn't a thing in the Chicagoland area. But I think bringing lacrosse in is going to open up that athletic ability and foresight to be able to transition certain skills that might get you more top talent in those particular areas, skill positions. So I think the correlation that, you know, Dylan explained between lacrosse and how the transition helps in football kind of points to that. He meant very, very intriguing prospect on the field, but an even more intriguing young man to speak with.
Yeah, he is. I mean, and again, if he ends up with Notre Dame, Sean, not only is Notre Dame potentially getting a very talented wide receiver, but then he has the opportunity to play both sports where Notre Dame has a great lacrosse program that's fresh off a national championship. So, yes, if this is a route that Notre Dame's going to keep going, I'm good with it as long as it is these types of athletes, right? These types of athletes.
Man.
So, very
And
interesting.
toughness. Don't forget toughness.
Yes.
They're fast,
Absolutely.
they're quick, but extremely tough to play the game that they play and to play both games.
You know what's funny is I was going to lead this off with the interview, but Jason Smith had put on the chat early in the thing, said Jordan Faison's brother looks like a gamer, and I was actually should have led with that interview. But yes, if you haven't seen if you haven't seen Dylan Faison's film,
Mhm.
you definitely should be able. You should go check it out because it's very intriguing stuff. And then
Yeah.
just watch his lacrosse stuff for fun, man. Like it is a really good time. So that's Dylan Faison, 2026 wide receiver. St. Andrews School, state of Florida. Obviously, younger brother Jordan Faison offered yesterday during the Pot of Gold. We're going to get into the Pot of Gold talk in a couple seconds here, Sean. We're going to talk about offensively, some guys that really popped to us early on in this process. Defensively, I'm going to project every name that you have seen offered by Notre Dame in the last 24 hours. But ultimately, guys, we're going to highlight a few of our favorites early on in this process. Before we go into that segment, though, please hit that like button for us, subscribe to the podcast, hit that notification bell. Make sure you share the podcast with your friends. That would be very appreciated. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Apple, Spotify, anything in between, 5-star reviews, make sure you subscribe over there as well. Boards at irishbreakdown.com for all your latest team recruiting intel heading you towards the 2024 season officially kicking off. We'll check Pot of Gold offensive recruits next here on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Sean, offensive recruits offered in Pot of Gold. You ready for this? I'm ready for it, man.
Let's get to it.
So I'm going to project this on the screen, folks. Hopefully everyone can see this pretty well. But these are, actually, I need to go back because that was the defensive side here. So we're going to go offensively here to some of the names that we saw offered by the University of Notre Dame. We're going to do this one a little bit differently as well. So basically, I texted Sean yesterday. Okay. Texted him yesterday. I'm like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Offensive side of the ball, you get 5 names. Offensively, I'll give 5 names offensively. We haven't discussed before the show. We'll do the same for defense. And let's talk about some of our favorite players that were offered yesterday by the University of Notre Dame. Because ultimately, almost 120 players were offered on Sunday. Guys, I don't know if you know this, but we can't possibly talk about all 120 kids, almost 120 kids. It's impossible. We don't have the time of the day to be able to make this work. So you can see this, though. We had 7 quarterbacks officially, or 7 quarterbacks that have been offered in the 2026 class. What is that? 10 running backs that have been offered in the class, a mess of wide receivers. If we go to the next screen, I also have the offensive linemen because we're talking about just tight ends, offensive linemen, 5 tight ends in the class, several offensive linemen offered in the class. We're going to go to the defense on the next section of this podcast, but that is the offensive players, Sean. Let's go one by one, man, because there's a lot of very intriguing talents. I know people love some stats, so I'm going to give some slacks. How am I slacking? Oh, because I'm not talking about 118 guys or whatever the heck got offered yesterday. Sorry, guys. I have a wife and kids and stuff. I don't know. And a full-time job, by the way, but, whatever. And another conversation for another day, right? But we're going to talk about a bunch of players here, Sean. I'm excited about. Again, we're talking about sophomores in high school. And I watched some of these kids on film and just like, that does not look like a sophomore on high school. And yes, we're going to talk about Illinois kids. We're going to talk about some Indiana kids because obviously Sean has some deep understanding of a couple of the defensive linemen that are offered out of the state of Illinois by Notre Dame in the 2026 class. But we're starting with offense. 18 players from the state of California, 17 players from the state of Florida, 15 players from Texas, and 13 players from Georgia, Sean. Those were the 4 states that were represented the most. Only 5 players from Illinois or the state of Indiana, but we'll get into all those players. Offensively, I'm going to kick it off with you first, Sean. Give me an offensive player that you watched already in the 2026 class that was offered yesterday during the Pot of Gold that popped to you for whatever reason? One of your favorite players that was offered by the University of Notre Dame.
I don't know why it's not. There it is.
There
I
it
was
is.
having a problem with the mouse. I'm sorry. Started out in the state of Texas. I'm going to start the wide receiver position, and I'm going to, let fans know it's okay, Double R, because we've been hearing, when are we going to get top guys? When are we going after top guys with size? Well, one of the guys that jumped out to me at wide receiver has size, speed, run with the ball after the catch, coming from a very, very good state of high school football, and I'm talking about Kaydon Finley at the wide receiver position. Let me tell you,
I
Alito
have
High
not seen him,
School.
Sean. I've not seen him. Break it down,
Dub-
baby. Break it down.
Double R. Double R. You're talking about a kid, 6 feet, 192 pounds. He looks like he's a 4'4". We got in trouble with Chris Mitchell for calling him a 4'4" guy. So I'm just gonna say he looks like, from my eyes, he's a 4'4" guy. Length, long, plays slot. They put him in the boundary. They put him at the field, but most of the time he's in the slot and the boundary. Red zone, big time, go up, get the ball, catches the ball, snags it out of the air. And when he gets the ball in space, there is no angle. Like, he's leaving Texas defensive backs in the dust. Film is absolutely amazing. I love this kid. He's at the top of the list for me for wide receivers in this class for Notre Dame to go and get, because he fits that 6 foot, 192 pound. You have to like the size. You have to like the ability with the ball. He's a top-notch kid that I feel like he can come in and play day one.
And for people that don't follow high school recruiting, so again, we're talking about 2026 kid, Sean. He's an Alito, Texas guy. Obviously, a lot of talent that comes out of Alito, and a lot of Texas kids that were offered. Again, I think there were, what did I say? Did I say 15 players offered on Sunday out of the state of Texas? And that is Kaydon Finley, ranked on the 247 Sports Composites, number 55 overall player in the class, number 8 athletes in the 2026 class as well. I'm going to raise you a Texas player, Sean, and I'm going to do you one too, right? I'm going to talk about Javion Osborne, one of 2 Javion running backs that were offered in the class. This young man, and by the way, most of these players over the next couple days, I already have an interview already out with Javion Osborne, for instance, but we are going to have a lot of recap articles over the next few days. We're going to break down the positions one by one, quarterback, running back, all the way down to safety. We're also going to have the one-on-one interviews with players, just kind of get their initial impulse and their opinion of Notre Dame and what Pot of Gold meant for them and all that great stuff, right? IrishBreakdown.com. That is free content for you all as well. So first running back I watched, Sean, and I think he may have been my favorite that I watched over the last couple of days, and that is Javion Osborne out of Forney, Texas, Sean. He ran for over 1,800 yards as a sophomore, over 1,000 as a freshman, has averaged over 7 yards a carry in back-to-back years. Listed 5'10", 188 pounds, elite offer list already. Has offers from Texas, Georgia, Michigan, Baylor, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Oregon, Tennessee, TCU, Texas Tech, USC, Wisconsin, Washington. A lot of great numbers. A lot of great numbers there. A lot of great schools. Javion Osborne, Sean, physical, fast, explosive. Javion Mallory, if I had to do honorable mention, another running back. He's out of the state of Florida. That kid is maybe the best all-purpose back that I watched of the 10 running backs that were offered. But Javion Osborne, folks, make sure you get eyes on him, because he is a extremely talented offensive player that Notre Dame offered in the 2026 class. Has a very good opinion of Notre Dame already. Both him and Javion Mallory, actually, Sean, I talked to both of them. They were both raving about Dylan McCullough. Absolutely raving about him, which shouldn't be a surprise for anyone at this point in Dylan McCullough's tenure. But he's a very impressive running back. Obviously, Notre Dame has done pretty well in the state of Texas over the last few years at running back. Jadarian Price, Kedron Young, maybe Javion Osborne is the next guy. Hopefully, we'll see. You have to get him out of the Lone Star State, but he was the first guy I had written down, Sean. Next, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I want to hear who your next guy is. But Dylan Faison was the guy that I wanted to mention, Sean, because we just had him on the show. He is listed at 6 foot, 5'11", 6 foot, 170 pounds, dual sport athlete, fantastic player in lacrosse as well. Number 1 player in the 2026 class. And he's a really gifted football player, folks. This is not a lacrosse player that you're giving, that you just want to come play football for you. He is a legitimate offered player in the football field that can also be a dynamic player on the lacrosse field as well. So, a big fan of Dylan Faison. Your number 2 player, because I already gave you guys a little bit of extra with Javion Mallory, but your number 2 player that you would like to discuss of offensive recruits in the 2026 class.
I'm going to continue the pipeline for running backs coming out of the Missouri area. Because it seems to work for Notre Dame.
Okay.
It seems to work for Notre Dame. So I'm going to go there, and I'm going to talk about this kid, Dylan Walker. Ray Peculiar High School, Peculiar, Missouri, 5'10", 180. You talk about speed. You put on this kid's film, once again, quick, can run outside, can run inside, whether it's a zone scheme. I haven't seen him in a lot of power scheme in his freshman and sophomore film, but once he gets into the open, I had a coach tell me one time, like great coaches always tell running backs, get to the hole and get to the outside as soon as you can if you're a big play back. And that's what you see from this kid. He's a big play back. You talk about Aeneas Williams, Jeremiah Love. I got K. Will that's playing with the Rams. Look, man, he continues the tradition of great running backs that could float to Notre Dame out of the state of Missouri in the St. Louis area. So I'm going to ride with Dylan Walker out of Peculiar, Missouri.
And Dylan Walker listed at 5'10", 180 pounds. He is, would you say he's the fastest running back you've seen on this list, Sean? He probably is, right?
He probably is.
Yeah.
He probably is. The film would bear that out. Immediately, that's what you see from the first 2 or 3 plays.
Because he's super interesting. Because I'm looking at the list right now. I think that so this is my opinion, right? I think Mallory and Osborne both have good, solid speed, but I wouldn't call them burners, right?
Yeah.
Jonas Walton, kind of same thing. He's more of a short area bursty guy. Messiah Mickens is really strong and powerful, but again, I wouldn't say straight line burner. Yeah. I haven't seen Amari Latimer yet, so I can't comment on him. Well, Michael Jones, though, is a very physically dense dude out of Alabama. Savion Hitter is more of a slasher type. Racine Guillory, a little bit of the same. And Davion Gross. Davion Gross is a guy I actually like a lot. I think he's got a little bit of juice. But I think it's safe to say Dylan Walker might be the fastest running back on this list, I would say.
I agree with that. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. His film is absolutely amazing. His footwork. And like I said, the willingness, even at 180, to go up inside, bounce off tackles. You see some of that in his film. But once he gets into the open, it's big play. It's big play written all over this young man.
You know who his film kind of reminded me of a little bit? This isn't a direct comp, but I got some Dalvin Cook vibes. I don't know if it was the dreads on top of the short area burst.
Yeah.
It's kind of the name that popped in my head. And by the way, folks, I'll have a running back article coming out probably sometime today where I kind of highlight just a little bit of film breakdown on each one of these players, right? So make sure you stay up to date on that, and we'll be able to talk about Dylan Walker moving forward here. A note on him, Sean, he was actually, and he went to the same high school, people that remember this name, Jaden Riddell, who Notre Dame recruited at tight end in the 2024 class, ended up at Georgia, same high school. He was supposed to visit, I think, for Ohio State last year or USC, one of those two last year, but he ended up not being able to make the trip. So let's see if Notre Dame's able to get him on campus this offseason. That would obviously be big in that recruitment potentially. Sean, maybe the best player I saw on either side of the ball here, okay? Either side of the ball. There is a young man, okay? And you'll actually not see him on. I'm going to scroll over to the next section here because then we're going to get his name on the screen. His name is Kendre Harrison, Sean. Kendre Harrison is out of, and I saw a smirk, so I'm assuming I may have stole one from Sean Davis.
Yes, I knew that out of all the hunches of guys on this list, I knew it's going to be at least 2 or 3 guys we agree on.
I'll tell you what, I can also talk about Brock Harris as well, since we're both going to be talking a little bit about Kendre Harrison. But Kendre Harrison out of Reidsville, North Carolina, okay? 6'7", 235 pounds. He's rated by 247 Sports as the number 2 overall player in the 2026 class already, and number 1 tight end. he has offers from obviously Notre Dame, but he's got Alabama, Auburn, Colorado, Arkansas, Florida, Florida State, Louisville, Michigan, NC State, Ohio State, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Oregon, Penn State, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas A&M, UCF, USC, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, West Virginia. So, Sean, it probably would have been easier for me to have listed the schools that haven't offered at this point, Kendra Harrison, but he is legitimately, I'm going to say something right now. He is legitimately a player that could play defensive end in college at a high level, by the way. I'm not talking about just being able to, get it done, right? Get the job done. He could legitimately play defensive end at a high level in the college level. He can obviously play tight end at a high level. I think he can play wide receiver too if he wanted to. Just gonna be a big boy wide receiver, right? Like he's a freaky dude, man. Absolute freak show. At almost 1,000 yards as a sophomore, had double-digit sacks, a lot of tackles for loss. This kid, Sean, can do pretty much anything he wants on a football field. Rare is a word that is used way too often when describing football players sometimes. In the NFL draft sphere, it's rare and generational. Those are the two words that are like super cliche and clickbaity, and it's wild, right? Kendra Harrison is a rare athlete. Absolutely rare. As long as this kid keeps developing on this trajectory, he's a legit top 10 overall player in the 2026 class at minimum. This kid is a special athlete. And I know that you saw him as well, and you wanted to talk about him, man. But Kendra Harrison, he can pretty much play whatever the heck he wants on a football field because he's a special athlete.
That you said him. Hey, I don't need to say anything. I feel like the way you just explained it, I would mess it up. Ladies and gentlemen, just go watch the film. That's it. Just go watch the film. Now, I would say he's my second favorite film that I've watched in the last few days.
Okay.
We get to the defense side of the ball. It's somebody I just cut it off after literally after the first 3 plays. I was like, okay.
Man, I love guys like that, man. There's guys every time that you watch and you're like, I don't need to watch anymore. I'm about to talk about an offensive lineman in a couple minutes where it's just like, dude, I didn't need to see much more. I didn't need to see anything more. Like legitimately just an incredible football player. But you know what's incredible is although Kendra Harrison is that dude, Sean, his tight end list, bro, there's only 5 guys, but Brock Harris is a stud out of the state of Utah.
Absolutely.
You also have the Caden Prothrow kid out of Georgia, 6'6", 215-pound tight end. He is a just skinny, more like a boundary receiver than he is a tight end right now. But that kid can run.
Let me ask you a question.
On the list. Yeah.
You say that and you see the difference. If just to use what Georgia had, right? They had the Brock Wright type. I mean, not the Brock Wright, the Brock Bowers type.
Yep.
And then they had what's the other kid they had last year? The big 6'7" kid, end of the line. Player. He's in the NFL now.
Oh, Darnell Washington.
Darnell Washington, yeah.
Yep.
I see that in Notre Dame. I think they have it already with Jack Larson, Cooper Flanagan, and then Eli Raritan. Like they have both types. Eli Raritan, as a true freshman, came in and was surprising everybody, possibly being the best blocker in the tight end room as a freshman. Cooper Flanagan, we go to the first practice. He comes out with the first group, and it's like, yo, here's tight end you once again. It's like
he's a mauler. Yeah.
It's like, yo, it is crazy. But just having that dynamic, and when we watch film on the tight end offense, you see that, right? You immediately see Kendra Harrison is split out. First play, split out to the field. Like, really? Okay. And then, you see guys like, the kid from Utah and Jordan Proto from Georgia. And you say, okay, there's a lot of duality at this position. And I'm sure Mike Denbrock is, chopping at the bit to get these guys on campus.
Well, and I mean, I don't even want to leave out like J.C. Anderson out of Illinois, Sean, which I'm sure you're pretty familiar with, but like he is a very Mitchell Evans type of player, right?
Yeah.
Like he's he's probably a little bit taller than Mitchell, but like he is just a great frame dude who has great hands, smooth athlete in the straight line. Like he's just a really good overall player. And then you even have the Hez Kent. I don't know how to pronounce it out of the state of Georgia, but this kid, Sean, he's listed at 250. You could have wrote 260 and I would have believed it, man. That kid is a load after the catch, man. Absolute load. It's insane to watch. But
I think that's linear. That's
Yeah.
linear, right? With all of them, run after the catch, ability to catch the ball and make some
Yeah.
moves after the catch and get some yards.
One of the most surprising ones was again Brock Harris, who is considered a top 30 player, potentially top 2 tight end in the class. He listed at 6'5", 215 pounds. He actually told me recently, Sean, he's more in the 230 something range right now. So he's a little bit bigger. That kid can win after the catch, man. I
Yeah.
was super surprised when I saw Brock Harris because I saw long frame. It's a pretty good straight line, a good straight line athlete. Like I expected him just to be a seam runner, kind of a
Yeah.
down hit field type of dude. But
Yeah.
then he caught the ball and won after the catch a ton, man. Like I was incredibly impressed by Brock Harris. That is again, only 5 guys offered at tight end in the class. JC Henderson out of Illinois, Mount Zion, right? JC Anderson, if I remember
Yes.
correctly, he's a Mount Zion guy.
Yeah.
Brock Harris out of Utah, Kendra Harrison out of Reidsville, North Carolina, Hezzy Kent out of Georgia, and then Caden Prothrow out of Georgia as well. Very different styles of players on this list, but man, that is a really talented 5-man group that Notre Dame offered on the pot of gold, man. Really good group.
And they went after the best.
They did.
They went big fish hunting. They weren't playing around. They're like, hey,
yeah,
we're going after the best.
You could argue that, and I would argue that Kendra Harrison, Brock Harris, and again, this is out of the guys I've seen, right? Like there's a lot of players I haven't seen. I've just strictly mostly to the top of the board type of guys. Well, all 5 of these guys, but also just a couple other miscellaneous guys, just kind of get a understanding of 2026. But I think there's a decent chance that Kendra Harrison, Brock Harris, and Kane Prothrow might be the 3 best tight ends in the country. Like they have that much upside, man. They're a very talented group. There's no doubt about it. Let me talk offensive lineman here, Sean. All right, I actually 2 offensive linemen I want to talk about. Well, let's just go one by one here, and then I'll see who you want to bring up next. Jackson Cantwell, Sean. Jackson Cantwell. Can we spend a little bit of time on this young man?
Ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to say,
yes,
what you're about to hear is not hyperbole. It is founded in truth and great information. And it is not overkill. Just open your hearts and ears to receive the engrafted truth from Ryan Roberts on this young man, because he's going to say some things. I'm just putting it out there. He's going to say some things that I second. So go ahead, Double R. I'm excited.
Only 8 offensive linemen offered so far, which is a typical number. Usually Notre Dame keeps smaller boards, and I don't expect that one to expand too much, right? At least in the near future. But this young man named Jackson Cantwell, who is listed at 6'7.5", 300 pounds, listed as the number 2 overall player in the 247 Sports Composite ranking, 5-star, and number 1 offensive lineman in 2026, Sean. Obviously, number 1 player in the state of Missouri as well. Out of Nixa, if I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, I don't know. Nixa, Missouri. Okay. 6'7.5", 300 pounds. Again, I want to emphasize the size for a second. Sean, there's no bad weight on him. He's just massive. Like he is if you would have told me he's a freshman in college, I would have been like, okay, I believe you. He looks like it. He absolutely looks like it. That kid, this is not hyperbole at all, might be the best sophomore offensive lineman I have ever seen. Just I literally texted Sean, and again, this is transparency from behind the scenes here. I texted Sean and was like, this kid's going in the first round in 8 years or whatever the heck it's going to be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. In 5 years, this kid's going to be a first round pick in the NFL draft. Two more of high school, 3 more of college. He's going to be a first round pick. I've never seen anything like this, Sean. He is athletic and flexible. He is super strong and powerful. I don't see a hole in this kid at all, man. He's unreal. Like, I mean, he's a people mover in the run game, but then you see him move to the second level where I'm just like, looks more like a big tight end than he does a true offensive lineman. That kid's special. And if Notre Dame is able to make a move there, that would be great. But I think that's going to be he's going to be a guy that's recruited by every single team in the country. I mean, his offer list right now, Sean, Notre Dame, Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida State, Georgia, Illinois, Iowa, Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State, Miami, Michigan, Michigan State, Missouri, Nebraska, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Oregon, Penn State, TCU, Tennessee, Texas A&M, USC, Wisconsin. Pretty good offer list. He's been to Georgia already multiple times. Again, he's only a 2026 kid, so it's not like we're nearing a commitment date or anything. I hope Notre Dame can get on that kid because that kid is something special. Special talent. And this is the type of young man that could start for most colleges as a true freshman. He's special, man. And Sean, my favorite thing, I'm a big track and field guy. As a freshman in high school, okay? Freshman in high school in spring track, he had a personal best shot put of 64 feet, 3 3/4 inches, and at 190 foot, 7 3/4 inch discus throw. He was the Class 5A state champion in the shot put as a freshman in high school. Like, legitimately, you could potentially, there's a lot that goes into this. But if he just focused on track for the next however many years, this kid could be an Olympic level thrower in track and field. Insane, man. Never seen anything like this young man. Never seen anything like it. The end. That's all I got to say on that. I feel like Boris Scott, man.
I was waiting. I just wanted to give you the runway because I knew we had previous conversations leading up to the pot of gold. Like,
yeah. Well,
yo,
Sean,
this dude.
I felt like I needed to end it like Forrest Gump, right? Well, that's all I have to say about that. Like, that's all I got to say, man. That's all I have to say.
And you, man, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right about this young man. We had good vibes after we watched Owen Strebick's sophomore film. Like, remember we watched Owen Strebick's sophomore year and we're like, yo.
Oh, I love the Owen sophomore film.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're talking about his film exceeds that to the point where Double R is making declarations already for his NFL draft in 2029.
Sean, I'm super high on David Sanders in the 2025 class, right?
David Sanders is absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Freak. Okay.
Yeah.
If Jackson Cantwell was in the 2025 class, though, Jackson Cantwell would be offensive lineman 1. Like, just flat out. He would be the top guy on the board. They're like, yeah, nationally.
Sanders protected. He was Jaden Davis's left tackle, right?
Yes.
Yep.
You're absolutely correct. So,
yeah.
And David Sanders is a freak. But this kid, I mean, Sean, like, literally, he's built to play in college right now. I mean, he could legitimately go into a college locker room right now and look the part. And he's 2 years out from that, right? He's 2 years out. So, yes, Jackson Cantwell, Nixa, Missouri, very talented player. Let me get your next guy, my friends. Who's an offensive guy that piqued your interest?
Well, I'm just going to go ahead and go with Kevin Brown, the other offensive lineman. Just a solid kid. Still has room.
My last guy. You took my last guy. Dang you.
So I'm going to go ahead and throw you this alley-oop, right? Notre Dame always seems to take a guy. Like, the profile has changed, right? You talk about Cantwell, 6'7", 300 pounds already. Okay, that we've seen that. Right. That seems to be the consistency where offensive line recruiting is going. But they always seem to find a guy that's in that 260 to 270 range that has a frame that comes in, and they allow their guys to look at. They'll allow Lauren Lando to take a look at him and say, what can we add? What is he going to look like? And this is the type of kid you're going to get in Kevin Brown. Love his film, love the athleticism, not as powerful as Cantwell, but I still love the abilities. And if he can hold weight and add that weight, the necessary weight, once again, the measurables, they're good enough to whereas I think this kid can eventually be a good 4-star kid that comes into Notre Dame and is going to have some versatility within the offensive line room that's really going to benefit the program.
So, funny enough, Sean, he brings such a just easy profile to love, right? Because Right now, he's only 6'5" and 260 pounds. I just mentioned Jackson Cantwell.
Only.
Who could right. Well, I just mentioned Jackson Cantwell that could walk into a college locker room and just look the part. Kevin Brown's not really there right now, right?
No.
Like he's a guy that needs massive development physically. But if you look at him, and this is going to sound weird, I'm talking about a sophomore in high school, but physically, no bad weight on him, dude. He's just a big athlete. He's just a big athlete right now. And he's also a big time wrestler in the state of Pennsylvania as well. And Pennsylvania is pretty good at wrestling for the most part. Funny enough, this is going to break your heart, Sean. I had someone message me about this kid, right? Like, oh, dude, this guy's legit, like very good. It was Caleb Brewer's offensive line coach out of Wyoming message.
So you already know the Nittany Lions are going to be a prop.
Well, they might be a problem, but he just wanted to kind of give me a head up of like, hey, dude, this kid Kevin Brown. And Kevin Brown plays up. Oh, where he play? He plays Harrisburg. He's a Harrisburg kid. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You need to check this kid out. He is really, really good. And that was actually even before I knew Notre Dame was going to offer him a pot of gold. Before that, this kid, wrestling background, incredibly athletic, quick hands. He's got big time ability, man. There's no doubt. I would say probably, if I had to guess who are the two offensive linemen that Notre Dame will probably push hardest for, at least early on. Again, don't know this for sure, but I would say it's probably Jackson Cantwell and Kevin Brown. I would guess that's probably them. Because Lamar Brown's very talented out of the state of Louisiana. I think they'll take a look at him, obviously, as well. Like they extended offers to all these kids. So they're going to keep looking at these kids, keep recruiting them, all that type of stuff. But as far as the two guys I think they might value highest, I would guess it's Cantwell and Brown. They're probably the two most talented players that I watched on film, in my opinion. So, yeah, offensive linemen are. I don't know how good the depth is. I haven't gone deep in, Sean, but like. At the top, it's pretty dang good, brother. It's pretty dang good, to say the least. Before we move on, Sean, actually, did you have anybody else, or was that your last guy?
Amari Latimer. You talked about him a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
I like this kid. You know, he's a powerful, at his size, to run inside and to enjoy contact. I kind of worry about him with injuries down the road, but I just love watching his film, right? He's totally different. Than the Zephyr Walker as far as the speed aspect, but I do love the young man's film. Dylan McCullough, like you said, man, he's just at a place where you see a name pop up. It's like before you even watch the film, you're like, okay, I'm gonna like this kid. I already know I'm gonna like this kid. I don't even know what I'm about to see, but let me just hit play and find out why.
Exactly.
I'm gonna like this kid.
Yeah. No, again, man, I said this in our preview because, again, I knew a lot of the players that Notre Dame was offering, and I really think the running back class is really good, man, in 2026, it seems. I mean, there's a lot of guys on that list where I'm just like, yep, I would take him. Yep, I would take him. Yep, I would take him. There's a lot of good running backs, and obviously Amari Latimer is a part of that. Savion Hitter, is, I think is how you pronounce it. He's a Woodbury Forest guy as well, out of the state of Virginia, so Notre Dame's obviously antennas go up when you talk about Woodbury Forest guys. So we'll see if there's anything there potentially moving forward. But yeah, man, that's all the offensive players that I had, Sean. I mean, we didn't really talk about quarterbacks because we already knew who the quarterbacks were on the board. There was no new quarterback offers that were out there. So we could have the same old conversation of, hey, who do you like more? Who do you like more? No Grubbs, or you like Brady Hartmore? Who do you like more? But we don't have to have that conversation. So we're going to get to the defensive side of the ball because we have a lot more players to get into here, folks. Before we do, though, hit that like button for me. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Hit that notification bell. Share it. Now, when you're on the podcast platform, whether it's Apple, Spotify, or anything in between, make sure you hit a 5-star review over there. And you're obviously also subscribed to the podcast. Boards.irishbreakdown.com. We're going to have a whole lot more offer recaps, position breakdowns. We're getting heavy into 2026 now, moving forward as the 2025 class is now filling up very quickly. Quick announcement. We already talked about this, but you guys obviously live are listening to us on a Monday, which is usually the mailbag. The mailbag will be Friday this week. Okay. Brian has a film breakdown of the LSU offense under Mike Denbrock this past year. That's going to be coming out soon. All the FBS opponents that they watched, the 9 FBS opponents. So make sure you're signed over at boards.irishbreakdown.com. We'll talk defensive recruits in the 2026 class that were offered by Notre Dame on the Pot of Gold next here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Sean, this is going to be a fun conversation, okay? Because a lot of the offensive players got me really excited. And then I watched some of the defensive players where I was like, oh,
Yes, sir.
we might have some guys here, man. We
Man.
might have some guys here. So this is what we're going to do, folks. Again, we're going to project, if you're live with us on YouTube, here's a lot of the defensive offers. We're going to be working through defensive line, defensive end. We're going to be walking through defensive tackle, a lot of linebackers on the board, which should be no surprise. Okay, no surprise at all. Cornerbacks on the board as well. Safeties. Great class that we're going to be working through here. So let's go one by one here, Sean. We're going to kind of talk about some of our favorite players that we have watched in the 2026 class so far. It's very hard to only pick 5. I have 5, but I could probably throw in a couple more guys. Let's start with you, my friend. Who is a guy early on that might be one of your favorite 2026 defensive players offered by Notre Dame that really piqued your interest?
Number one,
Tyler
Atkinson. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. It took me 2 plays. I cut the film off. 2 plays. You ask why? The man literally was on the outside, rushing the edge the first play, and then was playing middle linebacker the second play, and dominated both plays. I said, what is this? When did they start making players like this? Then I saw a play. I said, you know what? Let me watch the rest just to be fair. Because I already know what I've seen after the first 2 plays.
Mm-hmm.
They run the play, offensive lineman, the guard is coming up to him. He just literally rocks the offensive lineman and goes and makes the play. Most linebackers sit there, wait, try to use it to speed to get around. No, I'm going to attack this guard, knock him off his rocker, and then go make the play. I said, I just watched the guy rush the passer with great speed, take on the block and destroy the block, and then chase a guy down to the sideline. Okay. He's a sophomore. I'll take him.
And he's from
the state of Georgia, man.
Yep. He's a Loganville, Georgia Grayson High School. And he's rated as a 5-star recruit, Sean, by 247 Composite. Number 11 player in the 2026 class overall, and number 2 linebacker in the 2026 class as well. So he's pretty good, man. He's pretty good. He's like a Swiss Army knife, man. You know how Notre Dame tried to use Marist, right? And Marist had some success in it, but
absolutely
off-ball linebacker playing will, can play dime backer, can also blitz off the edge, can also almost be like a sub-package rusher at times. Absolutely insane, right? Absolutely insane. So yes, I did watch Tyler Atkinson. I did not include him because again, there's so many good players, man. It's almost absurd to watch all these dudes that we had to watch. It sounds so oh man, like it's a job. Oh man, we had to watch all these players. A phenomenal.
It's enjoyable.
Yes, it's very, very enjoyable. So let me hit you with my first one, Sean, and then I'm going to kick it to you because I think you're going to have some conversation about this young man, okay? You're going to have some conversation about him. This young man, Chicago kid, his name is Mikhail Blade, okay? Mikhail Blade, who I know actually on a pretty personal level, and we'll talk about that in a second. Mikhail Blade, who is out of Hillcrest High School. That's Country Clubs Hills, Illinois. I'm assuming that's probably an outskirt of Chicago, I would assume. He is listed, Sean, at 6'4". Most places have him between 230 and 235. But I think we have him recently at 245, 240, somewhere in that ballpark. So he's a pretty big-sized kid. He has an expanding offer list. Obviously, Notre Dame recently, but he's got Florida, Miami, Nebraska, Georgia Tech. He's got Boston College, Cincinnati. His offer list is expanding well. He is a player that I believe eventually will probably be a 3 technique, Sean, because I think that he has a big body, and I think that his body is going to continue to grow. But he's one of those very scheme-diverse players that can move from a 3-man front to a 4-man front. Long, athletic, and promising frame, dude. I watched Mikhail Blade, and I was super interested in what he could be on the next level.
Absolutely. So just to give you guys a little background, he plays for the Hillcrest Hawks. who I would say are a very competitive program. I wouldn't say they're one of the top programs because, of course, it's home with Flossmoor, Lincoln Way East. You have the other top suburban programs. But this young man, along with Hillcrest and Coach Weaver, I went through a tumultuous season last year, and it personally impacted Mikel. And I was talking with him yesterday in the days leading up to the Pot of Gold. You talk about a kid who visited on March 7th for the practice, and he'll be coming back to Notre Dame on March 23rd for a padded practice, and possibly within 40-something days, he'll be back for the blue and gold game on the 20th. So literally, he could be at Notre Dame 3 times. When I tell you this young man was ultimately the level of gratefulness he had, and I want to explain why. Of course, because it's Notre Dame. Of course, because he's a Midwest kid, a Chicago kid. So Notre Dame means something to him. But he just lost, along with the rest of the football program, one of his good friends, Marshawn Mitchell, who was a football player for the Hillcrest Hawks that was murdered.
Ugh.
Coming from practice or coming from a football game. And they didn't play for 2 weeks. Like literally, the program was rocked. They voted throughout the school and the student parent council whether or not they were going to continue to play. It literally gripped the south suburbs at the beginning of the football season last year in September of 2003. And for him, in conversation yesterday, he shared with me how difficult it was. And it was almost bittersweet to be having success in the midst of the loss of his friend, and to receive the offer. That was such a level of gratitude and gratefulness that goes beyond the football field, just from the aspect of just life and having the opportunity, and almost feeling sorry about that, almost feeling bad in a sense, like just wishing that, his friend could be here and just be able to have that conversation with him. And for a young man, once again, we're talking about sophomores, to be in the midst of a great accomplishment of receiving an offer from the University of Notre Dame and being able to reflect back on that and how that makes the moment even more special for him.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, it's safe to say that he loves Notre Dame. He said immediately, March 7th, as soon as he walked in the door, he felt the love from the staff and the players. He said he just immediately felt the love and wanted to get back as soon as possible. So he'll be back on the 23rd for practice.
Mm-hmm.
And he's looking to get back on April 20th. So like I said, within a time frame of, what is that, almost 40 days, this kid could be at Notre Dame 3 times.
Right.
And it's funny because we heard it with the Owen Street. Like, okay, why does he need to? Some kids, they fall in love with the place and they just, they want to come as many times. I mean, that was the same thing with Cam Williams and CJ Carr. Like, when you feel the love and it's Notre Dame, and nothing else needs to be said. So I understand. I agree with your assessment of what he's just a big kid. When you see him, you see the frame. Like you said, he could be a big end. He could be that 3 technique in certain situations, the versatility, the length that he has. I'll tell you one thing, he makes plays. I know that for a second. And another big kid from Mount Carmel. That's also
Jones.
a big time off of Braden Jones. They're workout partners. They work out together. So that's another connection to whereas that love, that they might be I'm not going to say they're a package deal, but they're definitely talking to each other about their experiences.
It could help one or the other depending on where they go, right? That's kind of where that is. Yep. Well, it's funny enough, Sean. So a weird stat, ready? This is the weird stat. So of the local products for Notre Dame offer in 2026, so I'm counting Illinois-based kids and Indiana-based kids, right? There was only 5 that were offered. 4 of them are on the defensive line. So you mentioned already, we just talked a little bit about Mikal Blade. but
Mm-hmm.
they also offered Illinois defensive lineman Gabe Hill as well. And
Mm-hmm.
then you just mentioned Braden Jones, who is out of Mount Carmel. And then JJ Finch, who is a defensive end. He is out of Warren Central. People are going to know that for obviously Notre Dame is recruiting Damian Shanklin in the 2025 class as well. So 4 of the 5, Sean, local guys that were offered are on the defensive line, which I just thought was kind of an interesting one. A little bit interesting there.
Remember the conversation coming off our interview with Dylan Faison. I told you about the transition. I feel like I think the wide receiver position over the last 3 years, we've seen big time wide receivers, come out of the state of Illinois, but it's really been 1 or 2 guys. I think there's even more depth growing at that position. And I think it's because the transition and the talent is starting to go outward from what it's always been in Illinois. You could always come to Illinois, ask Wisconsin, ask Iowa. You can always come to Illinois and get an offensive line. you can always come to Illinois, ask Notre Dame, and get a defensive line, right? They had interest in 26 defensive lineman Nate Marshall. They got Christopher Burgess. They were on Justice Scott. Originally, they had a relationship with Marquise Lightfoot. You want defensive linemen? You can come to Illinois, and you don't have to go to California, Georgia. You can come get top-notch defensive linemen out of the state of Illinois. And that just goes to, like I said, there are certain areas where you can go find top-notch talent at certain positions. And along the offensive defensive line, you can always find that in Illinois. It's always going to be a surplus of defensive line and offensive line help coming out of the state of Illinois. The other positions, you rarely hear about a quarterback coming out of Illinois. It's very
I mean, top 5 pick this year coming out of the state of Illinois. Or no, it's Indiana. Oh no, he's an Illinois guy, wasn't he? Was JJ Illinois?
Are you talking about JJ?
Yeah, JJ was an Illinois guy, right?
I don't know if he's like a true top 5 pick. He might get picked in the top 5, but hey, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right?
Agreed.
But once again, that JJ is a rarity.
Yes.
For the state of Illinois. Like there's a rarity that you get a top 5 Illinois kid in the NFL draft at wide receiver.
Right.
So I think things are changing a little bit with the talent in Illinois, but Notre Dame should be able to feast on the defensive line, especially the defensive line when it comes to talent out of the state of Illinois.
Well, we talked about this on Friday as a little bit of a preview, Sean, but like I think that it's very translatable to Illinois being a really good, especially Chicago being a really good basketball spot, right? Where it's like long defensive linemen, and I would also say tight ends, right? I mean, JC Anderson obviously just got offered, but I even think about like 2024. Oh no, was it Grant Steck? What was he? 2024, 2025? I'm mixing up my years now, but
I think he was 24. The kid that Christian Benneker.
Yeah, they were the same year, weren't they? 2024, because they're
you're right. You're right.
Yep.
You're right.
Yep.
You're right.
So long athletes make sense. Tight end, defensive line. Tight end, defensive line. So I think that those things are extremely translatable to say the least. So very interesting to keep eyes on. Gabe Hill, Mikhail Blade, and then obviously the 2 Indiana guys, Braden Jones and JJ Finch as well, as them being locals. And it seems like by all accounts so far, at least talking to a bunch of these kids, because me and Sean have had the chance to talk to every one of those guys at this point, that there is high interest, and I think that Notre Dame is pushing, right? So we'll see how they're able to close on those types of players. Next guy I have for you, Sean. Next guy. Ready? This might be my favorite watch I've had so far, okay? Of either side of the ball. Might be. Arguable. Jacksonville, Florida, the Bulls School. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Bolles School. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. If anybody knows in the chat, please correct me. Simeon Caldwell, Sean, listed as a safety by every recruiting platform. There is some expectations that he might eventually, though, grow into a rover. Like there's a possibility there because he is all of 6'3" and 185 plus pounds. This young man, holy smokes, 14 games last year. 137 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, and had a couple of interceptions. He plays safety, can play deep on the second level. He's an incredibly physical player getting downhill. I mean, he almost averaged 10 tackles a game this past year in the state of Florida. That kid, Bowles, pronounced as Bowles. Got it. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate y'all. The Bowles School safety, Simeon Caldwell, 2026. So that kid is a physical enforcer that has some pretty good ball skills as well. I think he's a rover eventually. probably 205 plus pounds, but he is going to be a really gifted one because his short area stuff is good. He's got good ball skills and he's physical, man. That was a young man that I'm like, that kid is going to be a dynamic weapon on the second level of defense. Big fan of Simeon Caldwell, 6'3", 185-pound safety that Notre Dame might view as a rover long term.
That's the very interesting thing about watching this film. I don't know if he even holds up at that position. Like, I'm looking at him like, yo, he's going to be a very athletic rover.
Right.
That's the first thing that jumped out to me. But it's going to be interesting to see how he progresses. I love this film. Everything you said about him was spot on. And just playing in the box, making plays in the box, the line of scrimmage, tackles for loss, things of that nature. He fits into someone that I think can end up being a chess piece in the mind of one Al Golden. Like, this is a guy that I can use to cause problems for offenses that the offensive coordinators will have to worry about. So you give a kid like this that's versatile, because I still think he will be able to, and he can play both positions within a game. That is the type of kid we're talking about. So I totally agree with you.
You know who he reminds me of, Sean? Remember Mark Barron that played at
Alabama.
All-American safety. Then he goes to the NFL and he becomes a linebacker on the next level because he's just so ferocious. Like, that's Simeon Caldwell to me. And he's got a very, again, Bowl School 2026 safety. He's got obviously an impressive offer list. Notre Dame obviously offering recently. West Virginia, Florida State, Kentucky, Louisville, Michigan, Miami, Ohio State, Missouri, Pittsburgh, Texas, Tennessee, among several others. So he is an incredibly impressive player. And I'm moving the board up. I'm so sorry. I'm talking about a safety, right? A linebacker safety, and I don't have him up on the screen. That's my apologies. My deepest apologies there, sir. But very talented player, Simeon Caldwell. Sean Davis, next guy you would like to talk about amongst your favorite defensive players offered on Pot of Gold.
Hey, defensive back, Dorian Barney.
Okay.
Love this kid, man. Peachtree Ridge High School, Swanee, Georgia. Quickness galore, man. I can't wait to see what his 40 speed is when we go to some camps over the summer. But his first play, man, he reads a screen, gets by the wide receiver, defeats the block, and delivers a blow. I'm like, this first play, and most of the time they had him playing a little bit of off-man coverage, but he's so quick that it's like, even if you throw it under, he's making the play with minimal damage, no run after catch. I'm still interested in seeing his long speed and whether or not it's going to be 4.4 in that range. But if he is that type of player where he has makeup speed to add to his viciousness to come down, be a short tackler and be good in coverage as well, I'm loving what I see from this kid, Dorian Barney, out of Georgia.
Yeah, man. We could have just stayed in the whole state of Georgia for this, right, Sean? You mentioned Atkinson, you mentioned Dorian Barney. Oh, man. Oh, gosh. So, yes, he's a very talented player. There's no doubt about that. Big fan of Dorian Barney. There's a lot of talented defensive backs just in general, man, in this class. Like, was it you that was texting about RJ Sermons about there being another Rodney Sermons?
Rodney Sermons, man. I'm like, yo, I'm getting a little bit too old, man. This is when you start hearing the names of players that you either watched growing up, kids that hop on lists. It's like, yo, because we said the same thing about another kid, right? TD Jr. out of Carolina.
Yes.
I don't know if he made your list.
Oh, he did make my list. Mr. Thomas Davis Jr. Yes, he did. He certainly did make my list. Sean, it's just a celebration of being old here, man. It's not even an old thing, actually, because we're talking about a guy that's son. I mean, all right, so Thomas Davis, who is a star linebacker for the Carolina Panthers, also played for a couple teams at the end. I think Chargers were one of them. But I remember him coming out of Georgia, man. Thomas Davis was a freak show, sir. Freak show, okay? And his son, shockingly enough, is a pretty talented player. Now, Thomas Davis, and don't feel old out there, guys, because Thomas Davis is still a younger dad. He's got a son that's a sophomore in high school, but he's only 40 years old. So it's not like we're talking about a guy that you watch that's like in his 50s or 60s, right? We're not talking about that right now. But Thomas Davis Jr., who's out of Matthews, North Carolina, Weddington, listed at 6'1", 200 to 205 pounds. A little bit of a smaller stacked linebacker right now, Sean, but the kid's instincts are bananas. It's almost like he has a father that was a Pro Bowl linebacker. Almost like that happened, right? Like he just sees the game at such a phenomenal level for his age, man. Big fan of Thomas Davis Jr. He is ranked as the number 67 overall player by Rivals. He is going to be a national recruit. He's going to be a guy that you are going to be able to, you're going to be talking about now for several months. Like,
Absolutely.
I actually just had an interview with Thomas Davis Jr., and which will be up on irishbreakdown.com. And Notre Dame seems to have made a pretty nice thing here, Sean. Nice thing here is that all the linebacker recruits that I've talked about so far, they're all raving about Max Bulla, man. All raving about him, which is a very good thing.
Great
Sign.
thing. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. It's a great sign because, again, I think Max Bulla is going to be a really good recruiter, but we don't know fully about that yet. Like, he did some really good things with helping to close on some dudes in 2024, but we have no idea of just how good he is as a recruiter yet, but seems to be doing a very good job at Thomas Davis Jr. So yes, he was definitely on my list. How many guys do you have left, Sean? I think I have two more guys left.
I have two because I gave Tyler Atkinson, Dorian Barney. Thomas Davis Jr. was on my list.
Oh, he's on your list. Okay.
Yeah.
Might have to throw one more guy out there. All right. Let me hear your next guy.
Topui Tamuhini, modern day big man, the only guy on the defensive line right now that's already at 300. I had to go get me a guy that was ready made.
6'4", 300, right? 6'4", 300.
And if you watched it, though, you talk about the quickness. Because most you think those are anchor guys, right? Southmore already 300. No. This is a 300-pound athlete, ladies and gentlemen, that makes plays, can rush the passer, can push the pocket, can defeat blocks, tackle running backs. He's that type of kid already. And of course, you would normally think, okay, this is a USC kid, right? This is modern day 300. He's a USC kid. USC's not doing too well right now in that area. Things might be a little more wide open, and Notre Dame is attacking right now.
Yeah, you got to worry about the SEC teams going out to modern day. You got to worry about Oregon, obviously, attacking modern day. Like, yes, USC is probably not the team to beat, but very early on in the process. And yes, Sean, he is a. Let me scroll to him right now because you're absolutely correct. Actually, I was already on it. Defensive tackles, yeah, only player. I mean, you have like Cameron Brickle out of Pennsylvania, who's 295. You have Tiki Hola, I probably pronounced that terribly, out of Texas, who is 290 pounds. But yes, your boy out of California, modern day, is the only 300 legitimate pounder today as a sophomore. He's a big dude, big kid, big Samoan, man. Like, just can't move him at the point of attack. Good luck. Good luck moving him at the point of attack.
Love it.
Man, modern day just keeps shocking. Modern day keeps getting talented.
They do what they do, right?
Yes.
Modern day Bosco, they do what they do.
Yes, they certainly do. All right, next guy for me, Sean. I think we'll have one guy each after I lay out this young man. Hopefully I don't steal him from you because I don't think I did, but we'll see if I did or not. So there's a young man, a defensive back out of the state of Pennsylvania, Sean. I was staying in Pennsylvania. Hopefully I did not take him from you. It doesn't sound like I. Oh, no, I did. Did I really? Oh, no.
I mean, we'll see.
All right, so there's this young man. I'll be super tentative because I don't want to keep stealing guys. His name is Joey O'Brien. He plays at Glenside, PA. Oh no, did I take him?
No. I'm laughing because literally I had a conversation with B. Driscoll about this young man last night. Yes. So yes. I understand. Go right ahead.
Yep. So Joey O'Brien, who is out of Glenside, PA, LaSalle College, listed between 6'3" and 6'4" and 180 pounds. We have him at 6'3", 180 on some verified measurables. This young man, Sean, this is what we wanted Ryan Barnes to be. This is who we wanted him to be. Who Joey O'Brien is. That kid is flexible. He can run pretty well, but his ball skills and his length are outrageous, sir. Also a very good wide receiver as well. But man, that kid's good. That kid's good. I like him a lot. I am shocked at his offer list, by the way. Absolutely shocked. Right now, he has Duke, Notre Dame, and Toledo, Sean. That's all he has. Now he's going up to Syracuse. He's going down to Alabama. He's going to several other schools to visit. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of offers that are going to be extended afterwards, but I do not understand why his offer list is the way it is. I watched the kid and I'm like, yep, the kid's very good. And by all accounts, Notre Dame is quite a fan of Joey O'Brien early on as well.
I was told immediately by Brian Driscoll, yo, did you see his film yet? Like, no, I haven't watched it yet. Double R, I agree with you, man. I don't understand it. And that is the quandary of college football recruiting, right? You watch a kid, you get it early, or you see it early, or you think like, yo, this kid is a stud, and then the offer list doesn't match up. And then sometimes it's the reverse, right? Where you watch a kid and you're like, man, what do they see? Why? What are the top schools seeing in this kid? So I totally agree with you, man. I love what this kid, you talk about Ryan Barnes and what we thought he could be. That's a very good comp. That's a very good comp. And like you said, players determine who they become ultimately, regardless of what people think in recruiting and people that recover recruiting, what their thoughts are about their film or their star rankings and things of that nature. But I think this young man, I would consider him to be high floor, medium ceiling, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's possible. I think we might have just made that up. But yeah, he's high floor, medium ceiling to me.
There's variations to a feeling.
Just make it up.
Yeah. Well, I like
instead of having the high vaulted ceiling, you just have a nice medium ceiling.
Well, Brandon asked in the chat, Sean, whether does he project a safety? I mean, I think he could, Brandon, but I haven't seen enough of him like physically though, as far as like as a tackler. I'm just talking about the coverage skills, and I look at that kid and I say he's loose and he's long. And I don't see any reason to necessarily move him to safety, but like, does his range and ball skills work at safety as a coverage player? Sure, that could work. Yeah, I think it could, but he's a corner to me right now. Could he be at safety down the line? It's possible, but I've really liked a lot of what I saw at cornerback. I have one guy left, Sean. If I'm right here, that means that you also have one guy left. Okay, your last defensive player that was offered a pot of gold that you wanted to talk about today.
I want to talk about from the same high school as Devin Butler and guys that could possibly be the #1 overall draft pick from Gonzaga High out of the DC area. He reminds me so much in the possibility of a kid that joined the Notre Dame 24 class in Bryce Young, and that is Mr. Carter Meadows.
Yes.
The limp he plays with, the power. I really like this young man. I really do. And I think that he bears watching to me. I'm going to put him in that Bryce Young category where I'm basing it upon potential. Absolute potential. This young man and what he could be at Notre Dame. It was between him and Blaine Bradford. I had both of those guys on the list, split as my last guy. And I love them both, right? But when you went with the safety, Joey O'Brien, I said, okay, let me step away from safety and give another defensive lineman. So I gave the nod to Carter Meadows. But I love Blaine Bradford as well. I love his film at the safety position. Very intrigued with how this 26th class is coming off of what Chris O'Leary was able to finally do in the 25 class. Now with the changes in the coaching, with Mike Mickens at defensive backfield, I'm very interested in seeing how the safety position plays out along with the defensive back position in the 26th class. With those changes, it's going to be interesting to watch, and it bears watching. But yeah, Carter Meadows out of Gonzaga. Let me say it correctly. Gonzaga.
One of the incredibly long players that are on the list, Sean. He's listed at 6'5". He lists himself at 6'6", and he has a lot of length. to say the least. I mean, there's some defensive ends here, Sean. We got 6'5" Ezekiel Harris. We have 6'4" Anthony. Have you seen Anthony Jones, by the way? Holy smokes, out of the state of Alabama. He's a Mobile kid. It's pretty good, man. Pretty good. Might be the top 5 player probably in the class that I've seen so far. Like, he's a really good football player. Last one, Sean, an interesting player that I wanted to highlight here because I didn't know anything about this young man, to be honest. Didn't know him at all. And then we got the list, obviously, early on of like who he is and all that type of stuff, right? So if you Google the name Rodney Dunham, okay, the first thing that's going to pop up, Sean, and this is out of Charlotte, North Carolina, Myers Park, a 6'4", 215-pound defensive lineman who now holds offers from South Carolina, East Carolina, Charlotte, Notre Dame, amongst several others. Okay. Rodney Dunham, though, if you Google his name, the first sports-related profile that will pop up is baseball. Okay. Apparently, this young man is one of the top baseball players in the state of North Carolina in the 2026 class. I think he plays first base, but he's a pitcher, and he throws over 90 miles an hour already, Sean. So I have no idea if Rodney Dunham has any want to play baseball on the next level. I have no idea, but apparently he's a really, really good baseball player. Really good. But I like him because he's long and he's explosive and he's my type on the defensive line, man. He right now, I think, could be a Viper if he stays in a similar range of weight over the next couple years. But I also think that he could play big end eventually. Like, I think that he is a type of guy that you put a little bit of weight on. I think that he could be 250, 255 pounds with that still explosiveness and burst off the line. A lot of really explosive edge talent in 2026, it seems. Rodney Dunham, really interesting player to watch, a guy that it seems Notre Dame likes. And I'm interested to see if there's any potential with baseball. Maybe it's similar to a Drake Bowen because he's an excellent baseball player at North Carolina as well.
You know, I love Notre Dame football, but I'm telling you, boy, if I was a consultant or a mentor for this young man, I would be like, guaranteed money. Guaranteed money looks really good. So if he's the number one player in that state, it's pretty safe to say he could end up in a Team USA program coming up real soon for baseball, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think Drake's little brother, Dylan, is trending towards that. Man. Yeah, he's trending towards that way of possibly being in the USA program. But I agree with you, man. Look, this is the excitement about when we say this is big fish hunting.
Yes.
When we look at the film, look, the film for the guys that they've offered is different in 26 than the 25 class. And it's just different. It's like an elevation of expectations within the program of, okay, now let's go get these guys. These are the guys we're ready to go after now. That's an entire program. And you have to be excited. Another long, athletic, big-time talent. And we're talking about sophomores that physically just like you're looking at like, oh my God, if these are the kids that are stepping off the bus in 3 years for Notre Dame, yeah, we might win some games before the opening kickoff. Like the intimidation is real when you walk out on the field and you look across the 50-yard line. And these are the guy monsters that are stretching, looking you in the face. Yeah, intimidation definitely will be a factor. So I agree with you, man. This entire class. Let me ask you a question, because it seems like on the defensive side of the ball, the net that they cast was a lot larger from a regional standpoint than offensively. It seems like offensively, they really went hard in California, Texas, Florida, and those were 3 specific states with a few other areas sprinkled in. Defensively, you're talking about Louisiana, Alabama, North Carolina, Maryland, Illinois, Ohio, Missouri, Pennsylvania. They cast a much, DC, the DMV area, a much wider net defensively, region-wise than offensively.
It seems like that the defensive staff, sorry, and Alexa's screaming in my ear. So Alexa, off. Please don't do that again. But Sean, yes, I think that this is an indication that I think Max Bulla Mike Mickens and Al Washington and that crew, like they've been out and about searching this country, it seems like, right? Like, I think you're 100% correct. Like, what did we have? I'm going to scroll real quick because I'm trying to remember. So 7 quarterbacks that are offered, 3 from the state of Florida, 3 from California, right? Like, and this isn't like a due diligence thing. It was just that, like, Gino Gaduli and the staff went out to California and they saw 3 quarterbacks that they really liked. Went down to Florida, they saw 3 Florida quarterbacks that they really liked. So, yeah, I think regionally, defensively is much more spread out. I would say 100%. I also think it's very interesting because we went into the week where there were a lot more offensive offers that had already been extended compared to defensive offers as well. So, yeah, I think there's been a lot of due diligence in here. You're still seeing, obviously, we mentioned some DMV kids, but Texas, California, Georgia, all those places are very well represented here. There's no doubt about it. But that's going to be so. That you had nobody else, right? That was you're done. You're good. Okay. So, folks, we're gonna end the show here. But hey, before we leave, a couple quick things for you all. Listen to me. Don't leave yet. Listen to me. It's important. First thing, the program switch that we talked about earlier. Friday, there's going to be the mailbag instead of today. We want to do the Pod Gold recap. A lot of offer stories and group rankings and a lot of things that are coming out at boards.irishbreakdown.com and irishbreakdown.com as well. I will also say that make sure you're subscribed at boards.irishbreakdown.com and subscribe to me or Brian on Twitter because you never know when things, and Sean obviously is too, you never know when something's going to pop up, okay? You never have an idea of when something might pop up next. So make sure you subscribe everywhere and anywhere. We'll catch you guys very soon. Want to thank everybody for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed this latest edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast.